The card on the front pew said Ruth Mercer in Nathan's blocky handwriting. Beside it were cards for Nathan, Tessa, Peter's brother Frank, and Frank's wife, Denise. There was no card for me. I stood in the aisle holding my purse against my ribs while the organist tested the same mournful chord 3 times. Nathan was 6 feet away, straightening the framed photograph of his father, as though Peter might complain about being crooked. "Nathan," I said, "where am I sitting?" He didn't look confused. That was the first thing I noticed. His eyes moved past me toward Ruth, who was already in the front pew wearing a black hat Peter would have called a satellite dish. Then Nathan touched my elbow and steered me half a step away from the arriving guests. "His family sits up front," he said quietly. "You can sit behind us." For a moment, all I could see was a pale thread hanging from his tie. I had an absurd urge to pull it off. I had fixed that man's collars and cuffs since he was old enough to complain about them. "His family," I repeated. Nathan finally looked at me. The question that opened inside me was not where I should sit. It was how my only son had managed to remove 42 years of my life with one sentence, and why no one in that first pew seemed surprised. 2 hours earlier, I had been standing in my kitchen cutting a sheet cake Peter would have hated. It was white cake with white frosting and little sugar lilies. Peter claimed white cake tasted like a nap with no dreams. He preferred chocolate with so much frosting it stuck to the roof of your mouth. But Ruth had ordered the cake, and Ruth had told the bakery that white was more appropriate. Appropriate had become a very busy word since Peter died. I arranged the pieces on 2 glass trays while June Wallace sat at my kitchen table, wrapping forks in black napkins. June had been my friend long enough to know when conversation was useful and when it was just furniture. That morning, she mostly let the room stay quiet. She picked up one of the forks and examined it. "These are terrible napkins. They came with the package. They feel like roofing material. Then nobody will spill frosting on their clothes, because the napkin will remove the top layer of skin first." I laughed, and the sound startled me. It seemed wrong that my kitchen could still produce one. On the counter were aluminum pans of baked ziti, 2 bowls of salad, coffee urns, and a tray of sandwiches I had not made because Tessa had firmly forbidden me. She had shown up the previous afternoon, taken the knife out of my hand, and said, "Elaine, there are businesses that do this. You call them and give them money. It's one of our better systems." That was Tessa. Dry, capable, and kinder when no one was watching. Nathan had been in the living room at the time, going through photographs with Ruth. Every few minutes I heard my sister-in-law say, "Oh, this one has to be there," and I would walk in to find another photograph from before Peter and I met. Peter at 23 beside a lake, Peter at 26 holding a bowling trophy, Peter at 30 standing between Ruth and Frank in matching Christmas sweaters. "Do you want any wedding pictures?" I had asked. Nathan had kept his eyes on the photographs. "Of course we do." But that morning, when the memorial display was delivered to the chapel, our wedding picture was not on it. I didn't know that yet. At 9:15, Nathan called to remind me the service began at 11. "I remember," I said. "I'm just making sure." "Your father died 6 days ago, Nathan. My schedule is unusually open." Silence filled the line. I regretted the remark as soon as it left my mouth, but not enough to take it back. He cleared his throat. "Ruth thinks the family should arrive by 10. I'm leaving at 9:30. "Okay. Is there something else?" Another pause. Nathan had inherited Peter's habit of believing silence was a tool. With Peter, it had usually meant he wanted me to guess what he needed. With Nathan, it meant he was trying not to say what he actually thought. Finally, he said, "Dad deserved a good service. I agree. I just want today to be about him." There it was, small enough to deny, sharp enough to feel. What else would it be about? "I'm not starting anything, Mom. Neither am I." He hung up after saying he would see me there. "No, I love you." "No. Are you all right?" But we had both become stingy in the last year, counting tenderness as though one of us might spend more than the other. June drove me because Nathan said he would be busy helping Ruth. I wore a dark blue dress Peter had liked, though he once told me the collar made me look like an unusually strict flight attendant. In the passenger seat, I kept flattening the skirt over my knees. "You can stop doing that," June said. "Doing what?" "Ironing yourself with your hands." I looked out the window. I don't want to arrive wrinkled. Peter won't care. He would notice. He noticed everything except an overflowing trash can. That's not fair. He noticed the trash can. He just believed I had a spiritual gift for emptying it. June smiled, but she kept both hands tight on the steering wheel. The chapel stood between a dental office and a low-brick apartment building. Peter had disliked grand funeral homes. He said they all smelled like lilies and debt. When we chose the place years earlier, in one of those practical conversations married people have, and then pretend they didn't, he pointed to the small chapel and said, "That one. Nobody should have to cross a marble lobby just to confirm I'm dead." There were already 12 cars in the lot when we arrived. Ruth was standing just inside the entrance, receiving people, not greeting them, receiving them. Her hat had a narrow veil that shaded one side of her face, and she wore Peter's old high school pin on her lapel. I recognized it because I had found it in the back of his dresser while looking for the cufflinks Nathan wanted him to wear at our anniversary dinner. Ruth hugged June first. Then she put both hands around mine and said, "You made it." I almost asked where else she imagined I would be. Instead, I said, "The traffic wasn't bad." Her hands lingered around mine with a pressure that felt less like comfort than inspection. "Nathan has done such a beautiful job. He's been here since 8. Has he? He needed something to focus on." So did I. I cut cake. Her mouth tightened, but she chose not to hear me. Nathan came down the hall carrying a box of memorial programs. He looked tired and older than 41. For one soft second, I saw the man who had sat at the foot of Peter's bed 3 nights before he died, his shoulders shaking while Peter slept through the whole visit. Then Nathan saw me, and something guarded slid back into place. "You're here," he said. "That seems to be the consensus." He kissed my cheek. His lips barely touched my skin. Tessa appeared behind him and took my purse while I removed my coat. "You look beautiful," she said. "So do you. I look like I sell expensive apartments to recently divorced men." She did. Her black suit was severe, and her dark hair was pulled into a bun so tight it seemed personally offended. She hugged me longer than Nathan had. When she stepped back, her eyes were wet. "Where's the photograph from our wedding?" I asked. Nathan shifted the box against his hip. We couldn't use everything. The display behind him held more than 30 pictures. I looked at Tessa. She glanced toward the chapel doors. That was the second moment I should have understood. Instead, I told myself grief made people careless. I told myself Nathan had been sleeping badly. I told myself Ruth had probably chosen the pictures and that arguing over foam board photographs on the morning of my husband's memorial would make me exactly who they had decided I was. For 18 months, I had become very skilled at explaining other people's behavior to myself. Guests began arriving in clusters. Former co-workers of Peter's, neighbors from streets we had not lived on in years, 2 men from his bowling league, and a woman named Cynthia, who hugged me and said, "He spoke about you constantly," though I had never heard her name before. Each person seemed to carry a different Peter into the room. Funny Peter. Dependable Peter. Stubborn Peter. Peter who could fix a lawnmower with borrowed tools. Peter who cheated at cards. Peter who once drove 3 hours to help Frank move a sofa and complained for 17 years afterward. Nobody brought me the man who woke frightened at 2 a.m. and accused the bedroom lamp of watching him. Nobody brought me the man who cried when I buttoned his shirt because he could no longer remember which hole came first. That Peter belonged to me, too, but not in a way anyone wanted displayed beside the guest book. When the organ music began, the chapel coordinator asked everyone to take their seats. June touched my back and headed toward the middle rows. I walked toward the front. That was when I saw the cards. After Nathan told me I could sit behind them, nobody spoke for several seconds. Frank examined the toes of his shoes. Denise adjusted her bracelet. Ruth looked straight ahead. Tessa half rose. "Nathan," she said. He gave her a look I had seen Peter give me across dinner tables. Not threatening. Just a reminder that disagreement could be postponed until it no longer mattered. Tessa sat back down. I wanted to ask Nathan whether he had written those cards the night Peter died or that morning. I wanted to know if he had practiced the sentence. I wanted to know whether his family meant blood, loyalty, or simply the people who had agreed with him about me. Instead, I said, "All right." My voice sounded calm enough to belong to someone else. I walked back to June and sat beside her in the third row. She looked at the empty space where I should have been, then at me. "What happened?" she whispered. "The front is for family." June's face changed. I put one hand over hers before she could stand. Not here. The service began. Ruth read a passage about devotion. Frank told the story about the sofa. Nathan stood at the lectern and described his father as a man who never turned his back on family. He did not look at me when he said it. I stared at the pale thread hanging from his tie and remembered teaching him how to knot one for his first office job. Peter had stood behind us in the mirror, offering advice until Nathan said, "Dad, you're making it worse," and we had all laughed. Now my son spoke about loyalty while I sat 3 rows behind him, close enough to see the thread and too far away to pull it free. When the final song started, I picked up my purse. June whispered, "Where are you going?" "Home." The reception. I looked toward the front pew, where Nathan leaned close to hear something Ruth was saying. "Yes," I said. "I need to take care of that." I left through the side door before anyone could stop me. At home, the dining room table was set for 32 people. Peter's chair stood at the end, slightly crooked because one leg had always been shorter than the others. I stared at it for a while, then began taking the plates off the table. My phone rang before I had stacked the 4th one. Nathan's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom, where are you?" he asked. Voices crowded behind him. "Everyone's heading to the house." I set the plate down carefully. "No," I said. "They aren't." "What do you mean, no?" "I mean the reception isn't happening here." There was a burst of laughter somewhere behind him, followed by Ruth's voice saying, "Are they leaving?" Nathan covered the phone, but not well enough. "Give me a second." I slid the stack of plates into the china cabinet. My hands were steady. It was almost disappointing. "Mom, people are already in their cars." "Then call them." "And say what?" "Say the plans have changed." "Why have they changed?" I looked at Peter's chair. "You know why." He exhaled hard into the phone. "We are not doing this right now. Apparently we are. This is Dad's reception." "Yes, it's not about you. That's what you wanted. A gathering for Peter's family. Have it at Ruth's house. She can't fit all these people." "She managed to fit me 3 rows back." His voice dropped. "So this is punishment." "No, Nathan. Punishment would be inviting everybody here and making Ruth eat the white cake she ordered. Mom, the food is ready. Frank can come collect it. The coffee urns belong to the caterer, so don't leave them at Ruth's overnight. You cannot be serious. I have rarely been more serious about coffee equipment." He went quiet again. I could hear people moving around him and the heavy chapel doors opening and closing. For a second, I pictured the parking lot. Black coats, damp pavement, guests trying to decide whether to approach him or pretend not to notice the widow had disappeared. Nathan said, "Dad would hate this." It struck cleanly. He knew where to place a blade. I put one hand on the back of Peter's chair. "Your father hated plenty of things I had to do. That isn't what I meant. I know exactly what you meant. Then how can you do this?" "Because I heard you." The line stayed open, but neither of us said anything. I could imagine him pressing his lips together the way Peter used to when I refused to rescue him from his own choices. Finally, Nathan said, "Frank will be there in 10 minutes. Tell him the side door is open." I ended the call before he could answer. For the next few minutes, I moved through the house, taking down the version of hospitality I had built. I put the sugar bowl back in the cupboard. I returned the extra chairs to the walls. I gathered the little glass vases from the dining table and carried them to the sink, where the white carnations leaned against one another like tired women on a bus. The front doorbell rang. I froze with a vase in my hand. Frank could not have crossed town that quickly. I went to the window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to see Cynthia, the woman who said Peter spoke of me constantly, standing on the porch with an older man I didn't recognize. The doorbell rang again. Cynthia spotted me through the window and lifted one hand in a cautious wave. I opened the door 6 inches. "Oh," she said brightly. "We're early. The reception has moved to Ruth's." Her smile remained in place, waiting for the rest of the sentence. "Has it?" "Yes." The man beside her looked relieved, as if he had suspected he was at the wrong house all along. Cynthia tilted her head. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but the food will be." I gave her Ruth's address. She thanked me twice slowly and guided her companion back toward their car. Before she got in, she looked over her shoulder at the house. By nightfall, I knew the story would have acquired weather, witnesses, and possibly broken glass. A few minutes later, Frank pulled into the driveway with Denise beside him. Frank opened the side door without knocking, then stopped when he saw me by the kitchen counter. He was Peter's younger brother by 4 years, though grief had reversed them. Frank had gone soft and gray. Peter, near the end, had become all angles. "Elaine," he said. "Frank." Denise came in behind him carrying empty cardboard boxes. She gave me a small, helpless smile. "We came for the food," Frank said. "I assumed you weren't here to fix the upstairs toilet." He glanced toward the ceiling. "Is it still running?" "Only when it wants attention. I can look at it." "Not today." The 3 of us stood there while the refrigerator hummed. Frank opened his mouth, shut it, then picked up the nearest aluminum pan. "We could have stayed out of it," he said. "Could you?" "At the chapel. I know what you meant." "I didn't know Nathan was going to say that." "But you knew where my card was." Denise stared at the box in her hands. Frank shifted the pan against his stomach. Ruth said it would be easier. "For whom?" He didn't answer. That was the useful thing about direct questions. People called them rude because answers were inconvenient. Denise began loading bowls into the boxes. "I'm sorry, Elaine." Frank looked at her. "What?" she said. "I am." "You don't have to apologize," he told her. "No, she doesn't," I said, "but I appreciate that she did." Frank took 2 pans out to the car. Denise stayed behind and wrapped the salad bowls in dish towels. "I told him we should sit with you," she said quietly. "Why didn't you?" Her hand slowed. "I didn't want to make it worse." I nodded. "That seems to be going around." When they had taken everything except 1 tray of sandwiches, Denise kissed my cheek. Frank stood at the side door with his keys in his hand. "Ruth's upset," he said. "Then today contains something for everyone." He looked almost amused. Peter would have laughed. That made my chest hurt more than anger did. Frank glanced toward the dining room. "Do you want us to take the cake?" "Especially the cake." After they left, I carried the remaining sandwiches to the refrigerator and found that someone had labeled the tray Elaine's house in black marker. I peeled off the tape and threw it away. June arrived 20 minutes later without knocking. She came through the front door, removed her shoes, and followed the trail of unused napkins into the kitchen. "Well," she said, looking around, "you did it." "Apparently." How bad? On a scale of 1 to 10, on a scale of Ruth to biblical plague. Frank came for the food. Biblical plague, then. I sat at the table. The adrenaline had begun to drain out of me, leaving my arms heavy. June filled the kettle, found the tea bags without asking, and set 2 mugs on the counter. "Did I make a mistake?" I asked. She did not answer right away. That was why I trusted her. "You made a decision while you were hurt," she said. "That is a diplomatic sentence. I'm not the United Nations. I'm trying to reach the mugs." I moved my purse, which was blocking a drawer. June sat across from me once the tea was ready. "You might regret the timing." That doesn't make the reason untrue. They'll say I made his memorial about me. They were already saying that before you left. I lifted my mug. The tea tasted like hot water someone had described a lemon to. Tessa started to stand, I said. I saw. Then she sat down. I saw that too. Nathan looked at her. June wrapped both hands around her mug. There are looks in a marriage that are entire conversations. I used to have those with Peter. Did they work? Depends which one of us you ask. The phone rang again. Ruth. I turned it face down on the table. A minute later, she called a second time, then Frank, then a number I did not recognize. The calls came with the steady rhythm of water dripping into a pan. June reached over and silenced the phone. You're allowed one afternoon without a committee hearing. What if something happened? Something did. She stayed until dusk. We put the house back the way it had been before the memorial, except neither of us moved Peter's chair. June washed the cake knife, though the cake itself was gone. I found crumbs caught in the silver teeth and wondered who, at Ruth's house, was eating my husband's funeral cake. Before June left, she opened the refrigerator and divided the remaining sandwiches between 2 plates. You need to eat. I'm not hungry. You haven't been hungry since Tuesday. I had toast. You showed me the toast. That's not the same as eating it. She sat me down and watched until I finished half a turkey sandwich. Then she put on her shoes, squeezed my shoulder, and told me to call if I began having imaginary arguments with Ruth. What if I win? You'll still be alone in the kitchen. After she left, the house became too large. I walked from room to room, switching off lamps. Peter used to turn on every light and then accuse the electric company of personal greed. In the hallway, his windbreaker still hung on the coat hook beneath mine. The left pocket bulged with the handkerchief he had carried even after he stopped remembering why. I pressed the sleeve between my fingers. For months, I had told myself I would sort his clothes when I was ready. 6 days after his death, readiness seemed like a country I had no plans to visit. My phone held 11 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and 7 text messages. Ruth's first message said, "What you did was unforgivable." Her second said, "Peter deserved better." Frank wrote, "Call when things settle down." Denise wrote, "I'm sorry again." Tessa's message was the longest. I should have stood up. There isn't an excuse. I am so sorry. Please let me know you're home and safe. I read it 3 times. Then I typed, "I'm home." I erased it. I typed, "Thank you." I erased that too. Finally, I set the phone on Peter's side of the bed and went into the bathroom to remove my makeup. My reflection looked almost normal. That offended me. I wanted some visible sign that I had been moved 3 rows back in my own life. I slept badly. Around 2, I woke because I thought I heard Peter call my name from the hallway. For one lovely, foolish second, I believed he needed help finding the bathroom. Then the room arranged itself around the truth. I lay there until morning with my hand on the cold sheet beside me. At 8:30, someone knocked hard on the front door. I knew it was Nathan before I looked. He stood on the porch wearing yesterday's black trousers and a gray sweatshirt. His eyes were swollen, his jaw shadowed. He had always looked most like Peter when he was tired and angry, which felt like an unnecessarily cruel detail. I opened the door, but did not step aside. "Can I come in?" he asked. "What for?" His eyebrows lifted. "I need to talk to you. You could have called. You weren't answering." I noticed. He looked past me into the house. "Are you seriously not going to let me in?" I considered it, then moved aside. Nathan walked directly into the living room where the photographs Ruth had rejected were still spread across the coffee table. Our wedding picture lay on top. Peter was laughing at something outside the frame, and I was looking at him instead of the camera. Nathan saw it and turned away. "I barely slept," he said. "I'm sorry. Are you?" "Yes." Exhaustion makes people cruel. He stared at me. Was that supposed to be an apology? No. He began pacing between the sofa and Peter's recliner. "Do you have any idea what yesterday was like?" "I attended most of it. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I sat where you told me, and then you locked everyone out of the reception. I redirected it. You redirected it. To a family home. His face tightened. You keep saying that word like a weapon. I learned from the service. He stopped pacing. Fine. You want to do this? Let's do it. Dad's things need to be sorted. Ruth wants his high school pin returned, Frank wants the fishing gear, and I want his watch, his records, the brown suit, the photographs, and his chair. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. His chair, yes. I looked at the worn recliner, the shallow dent still visible in the cushion. Nathan followed my eyes. It mattered to him. So did I. He flinched, but only for a second. I'm not leaving without something, he said. I folded my arms. Then you may be here a very long time. Nathan gave a short laugh with no humor in it. Are you holding Dad's things hostage now? Hostage implies I kidnapped them. Most of those things have been in this house longer than you've been paying taxes. The watch is mine. According to whom? Dad told me I could have it. When? He looked toward the windows. I don't remember the exact date. Was he still living here? What does that have to do with anything? It tells me whether he knew which watch he was discussing. Nathan's head snapped back toward me. That's disgusting. No, it's factual. You always do that. You make everything sound clinical so you don't have to feel bad. I gripped my elbows harder. The truth was almost the reverse. I made things sound clinical because feeling bad had stopped being useful around the 3rd month of Peter's illness. Which watch? I asked. His good one. The silver Hamilton or the gold watch from your grandfather? Nathan hesitated. I nodded. That's why we're not emptying drawers today. I know what Dad owned. You knew what he wore when he could still fasten a clasp. His jaw shifted. I had gone too far, or maybe simply far enough to reach something. Nathan walked to the fireplace mantel, where one photograph had remained through all the memorial preparations. It showed the 3 of us at a seafood restaurant on Peter's 65th birthday. Peter wore a paper bib printed with a lobster body. Nathan had objected to the picture because he said his father looked ridiculous. Peter had loved it. Nathan picked up the frame. Put that down, I said. He turned it over as if checking the back. I'm looking at it. Then you can look at it where it is. Jesus, Mom. Not everything you touch becomes yours. He set the photograph down too hard. The frame tipped backward, then caught against the wall. You think I'm stealing from you? I think you walked into my house with a shopping list. It was his house. It was our house. He was my father. He was my husband. Then why didn't you let him come home? The room changed. It did not become louder or colder. It simply lost every exit. Nathan stood with one hand braced on the mantel, breathing through his nose. He had not come for the chair. Not really. The chair was just something large enough to carry his anger in. I said, We've discussed this. No, you've announced things. That isn't the same as discussing them. The facility was the safest place for him. He hated it. I know. He begged you. I know. He called me crying. I know that too. Nathan's eyes reddened. Do you? Yes, because I'm not sure you understand what it was like hearing him say his own wife wouldn't let him come home. I almost told him what the call had followed. Peter had tried to leave the facility through a service door that afternoon. When an aide stopped him, he swung his cane, fell backward, and split the skin on his elbow. By the time I arrived, he had forgotten the fall but remembered being angry. He asked me to drive him home every 4 minutes for nearly 2 hours. When I refused, he called Nathan and said I had locked him away because I wanted the house to myself. I had stood 3 feet from him during that call, holding a towel against the blood seeping through his bandage. Nathan did not know any of that. I could have told him then. The details were sitting behind my teeth. But Peter had once made me promise not to tell Nathan about the accidents, the shouting, or the night he tried to urinate in the kitchen trash can. He had been lucid that morning, ashamed, still himself enough to beg for dignity. Death had not told me what to do with that promise. I understand it was painful, I said. Nathan laughed again, softer this time. Painful. What word would you prefer? Cruel. I looked at him. He waited for me to defend myself. When I didn't, he seemed disappointed. You stopped bringing him here on weekends, he said. Ruth said he was doing better. Ruth visited him twice in his last month. She said he was alert. He was alert for 20 minutes. He knew her. Yes, he knew me. Most of the time. Nathan flinched as if I had insulted him. I walked into the kitchen because I could not stand inside that living room another second. He followed me. The 2 mugs from the night before sat upside down on the drying mat. I opened a cupboard, closed it, then opened the refrigerator, though I needed nothing from it. The tray of sandwiches filled the top shelf. Do you want coffee? I asked. He stared at me. No, I don't want coffee. You look like you need it. My father is dead. My mother canceled his reception, and now she won't let me have a photograph. Coffee isn't the gap here. You may have photographs. You just told me not to touch one. You may choose copies. Copies. Yes, Nathan. I would also like photographs of my own life. He rubbed both hands down his face. When he lowered them, he looked less furious and more tired. I don't know who you are right now, he said. I could say the same. I'm grieving. So am I. You don't act like it. That landed differently from the other things. Not because it was worse, but because I had feared it myself. I glanced at the refrigerator door. Peter's appointment card from the podiatrist was still held there by a magnet shaped like a tomato. The appointment was for the following Thursday. I had not canceled it. How should I act? I asked. Should I cry where you can see me? Would that help? You know what I mean. No. Tell me. You're angry. Yes. At him. I stared at my son. Nathan leaned against the counter. You were angry at Dad for getting sick. You were angry when he needed things. Every time I came over, you had a list of what went wrong. He fell, he wandered, he forgot. You never talked about him like he was still a person. I talked about what was happening. You talked about problems. Because you came here and asked how he was, then argued with the answer. I was trying to give you hope. You were trying to make me say he was better, so you could leave. His face went still. I wished the words back immediately, not because they were untrue, but because truth spoken to injure someone becomes difficult to distinguish from a lie. Nathan pushed away from the counter. Fine, he said. I'll leave. You don't have to. You clearly want me to. I want you to stop demanding things long enough to remember I buried him, too. We didn't bury him. You know what I mean? No, apparently exact words matter now. Peter had been cremated because that was what he wanted. His ashes were still at the funeral home, waiting until after the memorial for us to decide when to collect them. Nathan and I had been supposed to go together. The thought came between us at the same moment. I could tell by the way his expression changed. I'll pick up the ashes, he said. No, you don't get to say no to everything. We agreed to go together. That was before yesterday. Peter is not a trophy you receive for winning an argument. You're the one keeping score. Nathan turned toward the living room. I followed him and saw him reach for the photograph again. Nathan. He stopped, his fingers inches from the frame. For a second, I thought he might take it just to force the matter. Instead, his hand fell to his side. What am I allowed to have? He asked without turning around. The question sounded younger than he was. It softened something in me I did not want, softened yet. You can have the brown suit, I said. He hadn't worn it in years, but if it means something to you, take it. We can go through the records together. There are some I want. You can choose photographs and I'll have copies made. The watch? When we know which one. The chair? No. He turned. Why? Because the dent in it was the shape of Peter's body. Because I had spent months resenting that chair for holding him while I carried everything else. Because every evening at 6, I still looked toward it expecting to see his feet crossed at the ankles. Because it stays here, I said. For how long? I don't know. That's not fair. I am not organizing my grief around your pickup schedule. Nathan's mouth twisted. There it is again. You make it sound reasonable. It is reasonable. You canceled a funeral reception, a memorial reception. Do you hear yourself? Constantly. It's exhausting. He almost smiled. It appeared for less than a second, an old reflex from the years when he still found me funny. Then he remembered himself. I went to the front door and opened it. You may come back next Saturday at 10, I said. Alone. Why alone? Because I will not have Ruth walking through my bedroom deciding which parts of my marriage belong to her. She's his sister, and I'm his wife. We established yesterday that those categories are apparently at war. You're being dramatic. I'm giving you terms. Come alone, at a time we agree on, and ask for things instead of ordering me to surrender them. Surrender them? You said you weren't leaving without something. His cheeks colored. I held the door open. He stood in the middle of the living room looking from me to Peter's chair. Then he picked up his car keys from the coffee table. I had not noticed him put them there. Ruth already has the high school pin, I said as he passed me. What? She wore it yesterday. Nathan blinked. You said she wanted it returned, I continued. She took it from Peter's dresser last week. Apparently she wants it returned to herself. I didn't notice. No. He stepped onto the porch. Morning light hit his face, revealing how badly he needed sleep. Saturday doesn't work, he said. Then call when you know what does. You might answer? If you call to arrange a time. He shoved his hands into the sweatshirt pocket. Tessa told me what she texted you. I didn't respond. I know, she told you. She felt guilty. She should speak for herself. She did. Apparently everybody has something to apologize to you for. Not everybody. Just your family. The word hung between us again. Nathan walked down the steps. At his car, he turned. Dad said the facility felt like prison. I wanted to tell him that Peter had also said the facility was a hotel, a train station, and on one memorable afternoon, the United States Senate. I wanted to make Nathan understand that illness had made every true statement unstable. Instead, I said, I know what he said. Nathan got into his car and slammed the door. I remained on the porch until he drove away, then went back inside and locked the door. The house felt bruised, as though the argument had struck the walls on its way out. I carried the seafood restaurant photograph to the kitchen and sat with it at the table. In the picture, Nathan was laughing at his father's lobster bib. Peter had one arm around me, his fingers resting on my shoulder. I remembered the waitress taking 3 pictures because Peter kept closing his eyes on purpose. I removed the cardboard backing to check whether the extra prints were still tucked inside. There were 2. I placed one in an envelope for Nathan. Then I wrote Saturday on the front, though he had already said he wasn't coming. I left the envelope on the kitchen table until noon, then moved it to the counter because I needed the table. An hour later, I put it in the top drawer beside the takeout menus and batteries. By evening, I had opened that drawer 4 times without needing either food or electricity. Ruth arrived just after 5 carrying one of the coffee urns. She had removed the satellite dish hat, but she was still wearing the black dress and Peter's high school pin. The narrow gold shield flashed when she stepped beneath the porch light. This belongs to the caterer, she said. I know. You could have told Frank. I did. He forgot it. That sounds like Frank. She held the urn out with both hands. I took it. She did not release the handles. We need to talk, she said. I've had enough talking for one day. This can't wait. Is the coffee getting impatient? Her fingers tightened. You embarrass this family. I pulled the urn toward me. Ruth finally let go. Come back when you can say something Nathan hasn't already said. She put one foot across the threshold before I could close the door. Not enough to enter, just enough to prevent me from ending the conversation without making a physical point of it. Ruth and I had known each other for 43 years. At our first meeting, she had asked whether my hair was naturally that color. Peter told me afterward that she was protective. It took me years to understand that protective was the word the Mercers used when Ruth was being mean on their behalf. You think this is about seating, she said. You put my name 3 rows back. I'm comfortable saying seating was involved. Nathan made the cards. You watched him put them down. I didn't arrange the chapel. You arranged everything else. Apparently even the dead man's wife." Ruth's face pulled tight around the mouth. She and Peter had the same pale gray eyes, though Peter's had usually carried a joke in reserve. Looking at her sometimes felt like seeing what his face might have become without humor. "You weren't the only person who lost him," she said. "I never claimed I was. You act like your grief outranks everyone else's. I asked to sit in the front row at my husband's memorial. You canceled the reception. After my son informed me I wasn't family, Nathan was upset. So was I. Only one of us gets that excuse." Ruth glanced toward the street. Frank's car was parked at the curb behind her. He sat in the driver's seat looking resolutely at his phone. Of course he had brought her. Ruth never drove after dark, and Frank never developed the ability to refuse her anything without pretending he had not heard. "Peter spent his last year asking to go home," she said. There it was. Ruth had always preferred to reach the wound quickly. It saved time. "He asked to go home when he was in his own bedroom," I said. "That's not funny. It wasn't when it happened. He told me you stopped trying. Peter told you the nurses were running a gambling operation in the laundry room. He had clear days. He had clear minutes. And you decided which ones counted." I balanced the urn against my hip. It was heavier than it looked, an empty steel cylinder with the authority of church equipment. "I decided whether he could safely walk to the bathroom," I said. "I decided whether a cough meant he was choking. I decided when to call the nurse and when to wait, when to argue and when to lie, and whether telling him you were coming on Friday would comfort him or make him ask every 6 minutes if it was Friday yet. Those were the decisions available. You always have a list." "Yes. Caring for a sick person produces lists. You made him sound like a burden. He was a burden." Ruth's eyes widened. "So was I to him sometimes," I said. "That's marriage. You carry what becomes too heavy for the other person. It doesn't mean you stop loving what you're carrying. That's a very convenient explanation now that he can't answer." I looked at the pin on her dress. "When did you take that?" Her hand flew to her lapel. "Peter wanted me to have it." "Did he tell you that before or after he told the physical therapist she was his cousin from Toledo? You don't get to dismiss everything he said. And you don't get to select the sentences that punish me and call the rest confusion." Ruth stepped back. Her foot left the threshold. The porch light revealed small cracks in her makeup near her eyes. For the first time, I noticed how exhausted she looked. Not frail. Ruth would have considered frailty a scheduling conflict, but grief had loosened something in her face. "He was my little brother," she said. Her voice broke on little. My anger shifted without leaving. I hated her and felt sorry for her in the same breath. "I know," I said. "You had him for 42 years. I did. We had a whole life before you. I never asked you to erase it. You put him somewhere none of us knew him. No, the illness did that." Ruth shook her head, refusing the answer because accepting it would leave her with no one to blame. She looked past me into the house. Peter's chair was visible from the door. "Nathan said you won't give him anything. Nathan said a lot today. Those records belong in the family. Peter bought half of them with money from our joint checking account, and the other half he bought before we met. None of them have developed opinions about bloodlines. Frank wants the fishing equipment. Frank can ask me, and the ashes—" My stomach tightened. "What about them?" "The funeral home called Nathan. I'm aware. We should decide what to do. We will." "Who is we?" I let the question sit there. Ruth looked away first. She folded her arms against the evening cold. "His birthday is next month. I'm having dinner at my house. Peter's birthday." I had not allowed myself to look that far ahead. What kind of dinner? Just family. Something quiet. There was the word again. Polished and ready. Am I invited? Ruth studied me as if the question were unfair. "I think we all need some space." "Then why tell me?" "Because Nathan and Tessa are coming, and I didn't want you hearing it from someone else." How considerate. I'm trying to avoid another scene. You created the seating. I created the scene. Is that how we're recording this? I came here to return the urn. Then your work is done. Ruth went down the steps without saying goodbye. At the curb, Frank looked up from his phone and gave me a tiny lift of his hand. I did not return it. I closed the door and set the urn on the floor. The caterer's name and number were printed on a sticker near the base. I called and reached a man who sounded alarmed when I said I still had one of his urns. "Is it damaged?" he asked. "No. Is the cord with it?" I looked down. The cord was wrapped around the bottom. "Yes." "Then we're good." That was the easiest conversation I had all week. The next morning, the nursing facility called about Peter's remaining belongings. A woman from the front desk said they had packed everything and could hold it as long as I needed. Her voice was gentle in a practiced way. I had heard her use the same tone with people signing medication forms and looking for lost sweaters. "I'll come today," I said. I drove there alone. For 18 months, my car had known the route without me. Left at the pharmacy, right past the bank, then through the intersection where Peter once insisted we were in Cleveland. The building looked exactly as it had when he was alive. Tan brick, flower pots at the entrance, one automatic door opening too slowly. That felt offensive too. Inside, the television in the lobby played a cooking show with the sound off. A man wearing red socks slept in an armchair. 2 women argued cheerfully over a crossword puzzle near the window. I signed my name at the desk out of habit. The receptionist glanced at the page, then at me. "You don't have to sign in today, Mrs. Mercer." I know. Neither of us mentioned that I had done it anyway. Peter's belongings fit into one cardboard box. I had expected more. A life should take more than one trip to the car. On top was the radio I brought him after he complained that the facility played music for dead dentists. Beneath it were 3 shirts, 2 pairs of soft pants, unopened socks, his electric razor, a bottle of lotion, and the brown slippers he accused everyone of stealing while they were on his feet. A plastic bag held his toiletries. His comb still had a few silver hairs caught in it. "Do you want us to dispose of any of that?" the receptionist asked. "No, we can throw away the opened products." "No, thank you." I carried home half a bottle of mouthwash because Peter had used it, which was not a sentence I would have believed about myself a year earlier. The box sat in the passenger seat. At a red light, it shifted when I braked, and I put out my hand to steady it the way I used to steady Peter. When I reached the house, I could not bring it inside. I left it on the passenger floor, locked the car, and went in without it. The phone did not ring that Sunday. Nathan had called me nearly every Sunday at noon for 12 years. Sometimes he called from the grocery store, sometimes from his car, once from the dentist's parking lot with half his mouth numb. The conversations were rarely important. He complained about work, asked what I was making for dinner, and put Tessa on long enough for her to correct some version of events he had already given me. At 12:15, I told myself he was running late. At 12:40, I cleaned the kitchen sink. At 1:10, I opened the drawer and looked at the envelope marked Saturday. At 2, I carried the cardboard box in from the car. Nathan did not call that evening. He did not call the next Sunday either. Condolence flowers browned around the edges. I poured out cloudy water, trimmed stems, and threw arrangements away one at a time. People stopped leaving food on the porch. The house settled into a silence that was no longer temporary. Frank called twice. The first time, he asked if I still wanted him to look at the upstairs toilet. It stopped running, I said. On its own? Even plumbing loses interest eventually. The second time, he asked about the ashes. I told him Nathan and I would handle them. Frank did not challenge me, but before hanging up, he said, "Ruth's having a hard time." "So am I." "I know. Do you?" He sighed. "I'm trying, Elaine. You're trying not to choose. That's not fair." "No," I said. "It's very fair. That's why you don't like it." Peter's birthday arrived with cold rain. I did not hear from Nathan all morning. At 4, Tessa sent a message. "Thinking of you today. Nothing else." I stood in the kitchen holding the phone while a pot of Peter's favorite beef stew simmered on the stove. I had made enough for 6 people before realizing what I was doing. On the counter was a small chocolate cake with too much frosting. At 6:30, Nathan and Tessa would be sitting at Ruth's table with Frank and Denise, having a quiet dinner for family. I turned off the burner. Then I took 1 bowl, 1 slice of cake, and 1 spoon to the dining room. Peter's chair remained at the end of the table. I sat in my own place beside it and ate alone. I had finished half the stew when the doorbell rang. For one irrational second, I thought Nathan had changed his mind. I pictured him on the porch in the rain, soaked and apologetic, holding the empty envelope I'd addressed to him. It was Tessa. She stood beneath a clear plastic umbrella with a blue casserole dish balanced against her hip. Her black coat was wet across the shoulders, and her hair had escaped whatever arrangement it started in. "Nathan doesn't know I'm here," she said. "That's an encouraging beginning. I realize it sounds terrible. It sounds like you drove across town in the rain to return a dish." She looked down at it. "This is yours." "I know. Peter bought it because he thought the handles looked aerodynamic." Tessa glanced at me uncertainly. He believed casseroles had wind resistance. Her mouth twitched. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She put the dish on the kitchen counter and stared at the pot on the stove. "You made his stew." Apparently, I made everyone's stew. The pot was nearly full. Peter always accused me of cooking for an approaching army. I told him an army would have called ahead. Tessa removed her coat and draped it over a chair. "Did you eat?" I was in the middle of it. "Oh, I can leave. You can have some." "I ate at Ruth's. Then you've suffered enough." This time she did smile. It disappeared quickly. I filled a second bowl anyway. Tessa sat across from me at the dining table, leaving Peter's chair untouched. She took 1 bite and set down her spoon. "This is better than what we had. What did Ruth serve?" "Ham. Peter hated ham, I know. Did Ruth?" "She said he used to like it. He liked it when Eisenhower was president." Tessa studied the bowl. "Nathan didn't eat much. I tore a piece of bread in half. I didn't ask. No." She tried the stew again. Rain ticked against the windows, light and persistent. After a minute, Tessa said, "I'm sorry about the text." "The text was fine. It wasn't enough. No text was going to be enough. I should have called. You're here now." She nodded but did not look relieved. Tessa was not a woman who accepted partial credit. It was one of the things I liked about her and one of the things that made being around her tiring. She set her spoon beside the bowl. "I should have stood up at the chapel?" "Yes." Her eyes lifted to mine. She had probably expected me to soften the answer. "I wanted to," she said. "I know. I actually started to. I saw." Nathan looked at me. "I saw that too." She rubbed her thumb along the edge of the napkin. It was one of the terrible black ones left from the reception. I had enough to sand furniture for the next decade. "He didn't threaten me," she said. "I didn't think he did. It was just a look. Looks count." "I know." Her voice cracked on the last word. I waited. Tessa had been married to Nathan for 14 years. She had a way of watching him when he spoke, not submissively but attentively, as if she were checking the math. Most of the time, she corrected him. At the chapel, she had calculated the price of correcting him and decided it was too high. "I told myself standing up would make a scene," she said. "I thought maybe I could talk to him after the service and fix it privately. Could you?" "No." "What did he say?" "That it was between you and him." "And you accepted that?" "I told him it stopped being private when he printed place cards. That surprised me enough that I put down my bread." "How did he respond?" "He said I didn't understand everything that happened with Peter. He may be right." Tessa frowned. "You're defending him?" "No. I'm saying he has grief I don't own. He doesn't get to use it like that." "No." She stared at me for a long moment. "You two are exhausting. That's hereditary. Peter could turn choosing toothpaste into a constitutional crisis." Tessa leaned back. "Nathan has been angry since the facility. I'm aware. He thinks you made the decision without him." "I did." The answer stopped her. "You did?" Yes. He told me you all agreed and then you changed the plan. The plan was to keep Peter at home with daytime help. The help lasted 3 days because he would not let the aide into the bathroom. The 4th night, he fell. The following morning, the facility called about an available room. They needed an answer. And you didn't call Nathan? I called twice. He was in a meeting. He would have called back. The room would have been gone. Tessa looked toward the empty chair. Why didn't you tell him that? I did. He said I should have waited. He told me you never tried to reach him. I showed him the calls on my phone. He said they were after you'd already decided. One was, one wasn't. Tessa closed her eyes for a second. Of course. What does that mean? It means he found the version where he was still entitled to be angry. Maybe he was entitled. At the decision? At being left out of it? You were the one there. I was also tired, frightened, and very good at deciding nobody else could do things correctly. Tessa's expression shifted. She had come prepared to apologize to an injured woman. She had not expected the injured woman to admit she was difficult. I should have insisted he come home more often, she said. You are not responsible for arranging Nathan's conscience. I'm his wife. That does not make you his transportation. It makes his choices part of my life. Yes, and your choices part of his. The chapel came into the room with us. Tessa folded the rough napkin into smaller and smaller squares. He's ashamed. Did he say that? No. Then don't translate for him. I'm not trying to. You came without telling him, apologized for what you did, and now you're explaining what he feels. Those are 3 different things. Her cheeks reddened. I came because I'm sorry. I believe you. I also don't want this to become permanent. There it was, the quiet request beneath the casserole dish. I leaned back. What would you like me to do? Talk to him. He knows my number. He thinks you don't want him. He came here demanding Peter's belongings. He thinks you're going to erase him. Peter? Nathan? The answer was so unexpected, I laughed. Tessa did not. Why would he think that? I asked. Because you stopped needing him a long time ago. I called him every time his father fell. That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? She looked toward the kitchen, perhaps considering whether the casserole dish was worth abandoning. You handle everything, she said. You always have. If Nathan forgets something, you remember it. If he hurts you, you smooth it over before he has to apologize. He thinks that's how you love him. And now? Now you lock the door. I looked at my hands. The hurt in that observation was not only Nathan's. Tessa had lived inside our family long enough to learn its systems. I had been proud of being dependable. I had not noticed how often dependability became permission. I didn't lock him out, I said. You made him leave. He threatened to take things. I know. He told me I wasn't acting like a grieving wife. I know that, too. Then why are you here asking me to call? Because he isn't going to. Then he has made a choice. Tessa pushed the bowl away. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It just isn't easy. He's your son. Yes, that has to matter. It is the reason this hurts. Rainwater dripped from her coat onto the kitchen floor. I watched a dark spot widen beneath the chair. Tessa stood and reached for it. I should go. You can stay. No, you were right. I came to apologize and then I tried to negotiate. She put on the coat and buttoned it. At the door, she turned. For what it's worth, the dinner was awful. I'm glad. Ruth made everyone tell a favorite story about Peter. That sounds like her. Frank told the sofa story again. He has 3 stories. Denise told him he'd already used it at the memorial. I smiled despite myself. Tessa lowered her voice. Nathan talked about the year Peter burned the turkey. He didn't burn it. That's what I said. The oven broke. Those are different moral categories. Tessa nodded. Nathan said you saved dinner by cooking everything on the grill. I remembered Peter in the backyard wearing 2 oven mitts and insisting the grill could accommodate a 14-pound turkey if we believed in it. We ended up cutting the bird into pieces with garden shears. Did he mention I was there? I asked. He said Mom fixed it. Ruth changed the subject. I looked down the hall toward the dining room. Tessa opened the door. I really am sorry, Elaine. I know. Nathan loves you. Tell him you believe that. Don't tell me. She absorbed the words without arguing, then stepped into the rain. The next morning, Nathan sent a message. Please stop pulling Tessa into this. I read it while standing at the sink. She came on her own, I wrote. 3 dots appeared, vanished, then returned. You knew coming between us would hurt me. I typed 6 different answers. I erased all of them. Finally, I wrote, Your wife apologized for her own choice. I respected her enough to let her. He did not respond. The invitation to Thanksgiving arrived 2 weeks later in another text. We're doing dinner at Ruth's at 4. You're welcome if everyone can be civil. I read the message twice, wondering which word he expected me to swallow. You're welcome, as though I were an acquaintance. If, as though my behavior were the uncertain part. Everyone, as though Ruth and I had committed equal offenses and he stood neutrally between us. I set the phone down without answering. June called that evening to ask whether I had plans. I've received a conditional invitation, I said. Does it involve parole? Thanksgiving at Ruth's. I may attend if everyone can be civil. Can everyone? No. Good. Come here. June lived in a second-floor apartment with a kitchen the size of Peter's old closet. She was having Denise's cousin Marla and a retired accountant named Ed, who brought his own gravy because he distrusted other people's flour. I can bring the turkey, I said. You can bring wine. I don't arrive empty-handed. Then bring 2 wines. On Thanksgiving morning, Nathan called at 11:12. I watched his name glow on the screen until the call ended. He did not leave a voicemail. At 3, I put on the dark green blouse Peter used to say made my eyes look expensive. I packed 2 bottles of wine and the chocolate pie I had made despite June's instructions. Before leaving, I stood in the dining room. Peter's chair was still crooked at the end of the table. The envelope marked Saturday remained in the kitchen drawer. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and furniture polish, nothing like the crowded holidays it had held for 4 decades. I'm going out, I said to the empty room. The silence did not object. June opened her apartment door before I knocked. Music spilled into the hallway along with the smell of butter and sage. You brought pie, she said, and wine. You're terrible at following directions. I've been told. She took the bottles and kissed my cheek. Behind her, 3 adults were arguing about whether Ed's gravy qualified as a beverage. Someone had set an extra place for me near the window. I stepped inside and let June close the door. For several hours, I was included in every conversation, offered every dish, and asked where I wanted to sit. It was a lovely evening. It hurt all the way through. The chocolate pie came home with 1 slice missing and a fingerprint in the frosting that June blamed on Ed. I put it in the refrigerator beside Peter's half bottle of mouthwash, which I had not yet found the courage to throw away. Grief had turned my kitchen into a place where dessert and dental products shared equal emotional rank. Nathan did not call again that weekend. His Sunday silence became a routine of its own. At noon, I found something noisy to do. I vacuumed beneath furniture I had not moved in years. I cleaned the oven. One Sunday, I took apart the trap under the bathroom sink and then had to call June because I could not remember which plastic ring went where. You own a phone, she said, kneeling on the tile beside me. It contains the accumulated knowledge of humanity. It also contains videos made by men who call every wrench this guy. Fair. December arrived in the form of catalogs, electric bills, and a red envelope from Ruth addressed to Mrs. Peter Mercer. Inside was a Christmas card printed with a photograph of a snowy church and signed Ruth, Frank, Denise, Nathan, Tessa. It was not handwritten. Their names were part of the printing. I propped it on the mantel because throwing it away felt dramatic and keeping it in a drawer felt ashamed. On the mantel, it looked like evidence from a trial no one had agreed to hold. Nathan contacted me 3 days later. What time are we doing Sunday dinner this year? I read the message while standing in line at the pharmacy. every year, on the Sunday before Christmas, I made baked chicken, rosemary potatoes, green beans, and Peter's mother's tomato sauce, which did not belong with anything else on the menu but had become mandatory through repetition. Peter played records too loudly. Frank brought bread. Ruth brought criticism in a covered dish. Nathan and Tessa arrived late enough to miss preparation and early enough to be praised for showing up. "There is no dinner here this year," I wrote. His response came before the pharmacist called my name. Why not? I considered sending him a photograph of the memorial seating card. I had brought mine home without knowing why and tucked it into my purse. It was still there, softened at the edges from being handled. Instead, I wrote, "I'm not hosting. This dinner matters to everyone. Then someone else can host it." Dad loved that tradition. I looked at the message until the words blurred. "Your father loved being served chicken," I wrote. He did not establish a religious observance. The 3 dots appeared immediately. This is exactly what I mean. You're punishing all of us because you're mad at me. The pharmacist called Elaine Mercer. I put the phone away. The prescription was for the blood pressure pills I had forgotten to refill during Peter's last week. The pharmacist asked if I had any questions. I wanted to ask whether one could take medication with resentment, but she looked busy. Nathan called before I reached my car. "Are you canceling Christmas now?" he asked. "I'm declining to cook for 8 people. It's not about the cooking. Then you should have no trouble doing it. I don't know how to make Dad's sauce." "It came from a cookbook. He said it was Grandma's recipe. Your grandmother copied it from a cookbook in 1968 and changed the amount of oregano." There was a pause. "Which cookbook?" "The green one." "You have 6 green cookbooks." "I know," he breathed out. Traffic moved behind him. He was probably calling from his car, the old Sunday habit arriving 4 days early because he wanted something. "Tessa said we can do it at our place," he said. "That's generous of her. You're invited. Am I allowed to sit in the living room? Can we not? You called me. I called because I'm trying to keep something Dad cared about. Then keep it." "How?" The question was impatient, but underneath it was genuine confusion. I leaned against my car door. "Buy a chicken. Mom, 4 pounds of potatoes. Fresh rosemary. The green beans take 10 minutes, not 40, regardless of what Ruth believes. The sauce recipe is on page 92 of the Home Italian Kitchen. You know the page? I've been making it since Jimmy Carter had brown hair. Can I borrow the book? I'll leave it on the porch." Another pause. "Are you coming?" "No. Tessa wants you there." "I like Tessa." "That isn't an answer. It is part of one." He lowered his voice. "What do you want me to do? Do you mean about dinner?" "You know I don't." A car horn sounded somewhere near him. Nathan swore, then said, "Forget it. I don't want to have this conversation while you're driving." "I'm parked. You always say that. I am. Then why did someone honk? Because I'm parked badly." Despite myself, I smiled. Nathan heard it. I knew because his voice changed. "Come to dinner," he said. "You don't have to bring anything." As invitations went, it was warmer than the one to Thanksgiving. It was also shaped around everything except what happened. "Not this year," I said. He went quiet. "Fine," he said finally. "Leave the cookbook outside." He ended the call. I set the green cookbook on the porch that afternoon in a grocery bag to protect it from the weather. Nathan picked it up after dark. He did not knock. The following morning, Tessa texted me a photograph of page 92. "Is this really 3 tablespoons of oregano?" 3 teaspoons, I wrote. "The print is smudged. Peter dropped sauce on it in 1987. That is both disgusting and helpful." She asked 2 more questions about the recipe. I answered them. When she thanked me, I told her to double the garlic because Ruth always complained and then took seconds. I did not ask her to persuade Nathan to apologize. She did not ask me to attend. 2 days before the dinner, Ruth called. "I understand you're refusing to host," she said. "Good afternoon to you too. Nathan has never done a meal like this. He has used an oven. It's a lot to put on Tessa." Nathan asked for the tradition. He can perform it. He's grieving. So is Tessa. So am I. Grief has not peeled a potato yet. Ruth ignored that. Frank says Denise might not come. Why? Apparently she's still offended about something I said at Thanksgiving. What did you say? It doesn't matter. It mattered to Denise. She's being overly sensitive. Then you don't need me. I didn't say I needed you. You called because for 20 years I've convinced Denise to attend dinners where you criticize her. I'm not doing that anymore. That's not why I called. Then why did you? To make sure you understood that if the dinner goes badly, that's on you. I looked at the Christmas card on the mantel. Do you hear yourself when you speak? I'm saying traditions require cooperation. You put me outside the family and still expect me to maintain it. No one put you outside anything. You sent me a card with my son's name printed beneath yours and addressed it to Mrs. Peter Mercer. That's your name. It's one of them. Ruth made a small noise of disgust. Peter would be heartbroken. Peter once stopped speaking to Frank for 6 weeks because Frank borrowed a leaf blower. That was different. It was October. I hung up before she could answer. Denise called an hour later. I heard you told Ruth I don't have to go, she said. I told Ruth I wasn't going to convince you. Thank you. Are you going? Denise sighed. Probably. Why? Frank wants to. You're allowed to want something different. So are you. I sat down at the kitchen table. Denise continued. I'm not saying the reception was handled perfectly. It wasn't. But I understood. You apologized. I meant it. Yes. She was quiet, then said, Ruth thinks apologizing is the same as choosing a side. Ruth thinks ceding is choosing a side. Frank feels terrible. Frank feels terrible in the car. Denise laughed. That's true. He sat outside while Ruth came to my door. He said he was giving you privacy. He was checking football scores. That can also be private. The conversation ended without Denise asking me to fix anything. That felt like progress, though I was not sure for whom. On the Sunday before Christmas, I woke expecting the old schedule to assert itself. By 10, I would have been peeling potatoes. At noon, Peter would have asked when everyone was coming, despite having been told twice. At 3, Ruth would arrive early and move something. Instead, I read the newspaper from beginning to end. At 5, the hour they would have been sitting down, I opened a can of tomato soup and made grilled cheese. I ate in the living room with a record playing low enough that Peter would have complained. Nathan called at 8:43. I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then I answered. How was dinner? I asked. A cabinet slammed in the background. The chicken took 2.5 hours. How large was it? I don't know. Chicken-sized. That's not a measurement. Tessa says it was 8 pounds. You roasted a small turkey. The label said roaster. That describes the method, not the species. He laughed once, unwillingly. I heard Tessa say something in the background. Nathan covered the phone, then came back. The sauce burned. You didn't stir it. I stirred it. How often? When it looked like it needed it. Sauce has no emergency flair, Nathan. Tessa said the same thing with more profanity. For half a minute, we were simply ourselves. I could see him at my kitchen counter, 12 years old and suspicious of onions. The ease hurt worse than silence. Then he said, Ruth and Denise got into it. I heard there was tension. Denise left before dessert. Frank went with her. That was good of him. He blamed me for seating them together. Where else would married people sit? Ruth wanted Frank beside her. Of course she did. Nathan was quiet. I thought tonight would help, he said. With what? Everything. I touched the arm of Peter's recliner. Dinner can't do that, I said. You used to make it look like it could. There was no accusation in his voice this time, only surprise. I waited for him to say more, but he changed direction. I still want Dad's records. They're here. Can I come after New Year's? Call me with a day. Alone? Yes. He sighed, though the fight had gone out of it. All right. After we hung up, I remained in Peter's chair until the record ended. Then I opened the kitchen drawer, took out the envelope marked Saturday, and set it back on the table. Nathan arrived at 10:12 carrying 2 coffees and a roll of packing tape. "You're late," I said. 12 minutes. You selected the time. I also brought coffee. Is it an apology coffee or a distraction coffee? He looked down at the cups. Tessa ordered them, so it may be a surveillance coffee. I stepped aside. He removed his coat and placed it over the arm of the sofa. His eyes went first to Peter's chair, then to the plain black urn on the mantel. We had collected the ashes together before Christmas, in a silence so complete that the funeral director whispered, though no one had asked him to. Nathan handed me the cup with my name written correctly on the side. Did Tessa spell this? She told them twice. I like her. I'm aware. The envelope marked Saturday sat on the coffee table beside 3 empty boxes. Nathan noticed it but did not pick it up. I had arranged Peter's records in stacks around the living room. Jazz near the fireplace, old rock by the windows, classical albums under the television, and a questionable collection of novelty recordings beside the sofa. Nathan crouched beside the last stack. Why did he own 6 albums of train sounds? Your father believed they were relaxing. They're trains. He found motion soothing as long as he wasn't required to go anywhere. Nathan picked up an album titled Steam Across the Rockies. Can I have this? Take all 6. I don't want all 6. Neither do I. He put it in his box anyway. For the first hour, we discussed only music. It was the safest Peter we had left. Nathan remembered dancing with Tessa to one of the jazz records at their wedding. I remembered Peter complaining that the same record was too slow until he saw everyone dancing, at which point he claimed he had chosen it. We argued over a Sam Cooke album. I grew up hearing this, Nathan said. I spent 3 weeks finding that original pressing for Peter's 50th birthday. So you gave it to him? Yes, which made it his. And then he died, making it mine. Nathan held the sleeve against his chest. You said I could choose. I said we would choose together. What does together mean if you veto everything? It means sometimes I say no in the same room. He stared at me, then laughed. Fine, he said. You keep Sam Cooke. You can borrow him. That sounds like shared custody. Don't make it strange. We divided the rest without trouble. Nathan took Peter's blues albums, 3 Beatles records, the train sounds, and an instrumental Christmas album no one liked. I kept the jazz, Sam Cooke, and an opera Peter played once a year to prove that he appreciated opera. When Nathan sealed the first box, the tape made a violent tearing sound. Your father used scissors, I said. Dad used his teeth. Your father had 3 chipped crowns. Nathan bit the tape anyway. I tried not to smile and failed. He saw me. For several seconds, neither of us looked away. The warmth that passed between us felt fragile and almost embarrassing. Then Nathan glanced at the envelope. What's that? It was supposed to be yours. He set down the tape and opened it. The extra print from Peter's birthday slid into his hand. Nathan stood very still. I forgot about this, he said. You complained about the lobster bib. It was ridiculous. Peter liked it. He liked embarrassing me. He liked embarrassing everyone. It made him feel democratic. Nathan smiled at the photograph. His thumb moved over Peter's face without touching it. You already had a copy. It was behind the frame. So you weren't giving me yours. I considered it. No, you didn't. No? He slid the photograph back into the envelope, then put it carefully in the record box. Thank you, he said. You're welcome. The words were ordinary. We both treated them cautiously. Nathan looked toward the hallway. Can I see the suits? Yes. We went upstairs. I had not invited anyone into the bedroom since Peter died. June had stood at the door once while I searched for a scarf, but even she had seemed to understand that crossing the threshold required permission I could not give. The room smelled faintly of Peter's aftershave and the lavender sachets Ruth gave me every Christmas, despite my telling her I disliked lavender. The bed was made. Peter's side remained flatter because I had begun sleeping near the middle. Nathan stopped just inside. The bedroom did not look the way it had when he was younger. The dresser had been moved away from the doorway. The rug was gone. A wooden chair stood against the wall where Peter's nightstand used to be. "What happened to the blue rug?" Nathan asked. "It became a fall risk. You loved that rug. I loved your father's unbroken hips more." Nathan's mouth tightened, but he did not answer. I opened the closet. The brown suit hung at the far end inside a clear garment bag. Peter had bought it for Frank's retirement dinner and worn it only twice because he decided the shoulders made him look legislative. Nathan touched the plastic. "Why didn't he wear this to the memorial? He was cremated, Nathan. You know what I mean. He wore the Navy suit. I thought you said it didn't fit." The funeral home adjusted it. His hand dropped. "I didn't know that. There was no reason for you to. I could have helped choose. You chose the tie. Ruth chose it. I suspected." He unhooked the brown suit and laid it across the bed. The facility box sat beneath Peter's shirts. I had opened it once to remove the radio, then closed it again. The top flaps were folded over one another without tape. Nathan crouched. "Is this from his room?" "Yes." "Can I?" I nodded. He opened the box and lifted out the brown slippers. "He called me about these," he said. "He said somebody stole them. They were on his feet." "When he called?" "Yes." Nathan looked at me, waiting for a smile. I did not give him one. He was wearing them. He accused an aide named Marcus. Marcus pointed out the slippers. Peter said those were counterfeit. Nathan turned one over in his hands. Peter's name was written on the sole in black marker. He sounded so sure. He usually did. Nathan set the slippers beside the box and removed the unopened socks. Beneath them were the 3 shirts I had altered. He held up the blue one. "What are these?" "Shirts." "I see that." He ran a finger behind the buttons. I had sewn small snaps into the placket and then attached the original buttons on the outside so Peter would not know the difference. Why does it have both? He couldn't manage buttons. Nathan studied the shirt. He wore button-downs when I visited. He wore those. I never noticed. That was the point. "You did this?" "Yes, all 3. He refused anything that looked adaptive. He always hated short sleeves. He said they made him look like a substitute gym teacher. Nathan smiled, but the expression did not settle. He opened and closed one of the snaps. "How long did it take you?" "Not long. You hate sewing. I hate hemming. This was different." He folded the shirt badly and put it on the bed. "What else did you change?" "What do you mean?" "In the house." I looked around the bedroom. The bare strip of floor between the door and the bed, the missing nightstand, the chair positioned where Peter could sit while dressing, a pale scrape on the wall where the bed rail had rubbed. "Things," I said. Nathan crossed to the wall and touched the scrape. "Was there something here?" "A rail." "On the bed?" "Yes." "Why?" "So he could pull himself up." I thought he could get up by himself. He could. Until he couldn't. "When was that?" "The last few months. I saw him stand. You saw him stand once." Nathan turned from the wall. "You keep saying things like that." "Like what?" "Like I wasn't here." I did not answer. He opened the bathroom door. A dent showed near the bottom where Peter's walker had struck it again and again because he refused to angle through sideways. Nathan rubbed the chipped paint with his thumb. "I remember this," he said. "You said he was careless. He was embarrassed. So you lied." I simplified. "For me? For him." He walked back into the bedroom. "What else did you simplify?" I folded the blue shirt properly. "Nathan, no." "You keep telling me I didn't understand, and then every time I ask why, you say there was no reason for me to know. You're asking now," I asked then. "You asked how he was while checking the time on your phone." His face colored. "That's not fair. You've said. I came every week, most weeks. I had a job. So did the people who relieved me. I paid them. Why didn't you ask me to stay longer?" "I did." "When?" "Your father's last Christmas here. The week he fell in the laundry room. The Saturday he locked himself in the bathroom. The day the neurologist changed his medication." Nathan shook his head after each example, not denying the events so much as refusing their shape. You never said it was that bad. I said I needed help. That isn't the same thing. What should I have said? You could have said, Nathan, I can't do this. I did. No, you said you were tired. You said he was difficult. You complained about the laundry and the appointments and all the things he forgot. Those were the ways I couldn't do it. He stared at me. I put the shirt beside the suit. Nathan reached into the box again and found Peter's electric razor. A few white hairs remained beneath the plastic guard. He clicked it on. The buzz filled the room. He shut it off immediately. I shaved him the last time I visited, Nathan said. You did. He kept moving his chin. He thought you were trimming his beard for a photograph. Nathan looked up. You were there? I was in the bathroom washing his dentures. I don't remember that. I do. He set the razor down with exaggerated care. For a while, neither of us spoke. The house creaked around us. Downstairs, the heat came on, pushing air through the vents with a low rush. Nathan looked toward the hallway. What was the worst time he fell? He asked. I felt my body answer before my mouth did. My shoulders tightened. My left wrist, healed for more than a year, began to ache. Why? Because you keep mentioning the falls. There were several. I know. Which was the worst? The last one at home? The one before the facility? Yes, you said he slipped beside the bed. He did. Nathan looked at the bare floor, then at the scrape where the rail had been. You said you helped him up. I did. By yourself? I folded the shirt again, though it was already square. Nathan watched my hands. What happened that night, Mom? He asked. I sat on the edge of the bed because my knees had begun to feel unreliable. Your father woke around 1 a.m, I said. He was convinced somebody was in the backyard. Who? He didn't know. A man. Nathan remained standing near the bathroom door. Was there? No. Did you look? Of course I looked. Peter watched me look. Then he said I was in on it. Nathan's eyes shifted toward the window. I tried to get him back into bed. He wouldn't come. He wanted the baseball bat from the hall closet. We didn't have a baseball bat. I knew that. He didn't. I rubbed my left wrist with my right hand. The ache had vanished as quickly as it arrived, but the memory remained in the bones. He pushed past me. I continued. I caught his arm because he was about to trip over the chair. He thought I was restraining him. He pulled away, then swung at me. Nathan's face emptied. He hit you? His forearm caught my shoulder. It wasn't deliberate. He swung at you. He was frightened. That's not what I asked. Yes. He swung at me. I looked at the bare floor between the bed and the doorway. I lost my balance. My wrist went under me when I fell. Peter stumbled over my legs and hit the side of the bed. The rail kept his head from striking the wall. Was he hurt? Bruised? I was worried about his hip, but he could move it. What about you? My wrist was sprained. You told me that happened carrying groceries. I know. Nathan sat in the wooden chair. It creaked beneath him. How did you get him up? I didn't at first. He lay on the floor shouting at me not to touch him. I sat beside him and waited until he was tired. How long? About 40 minutes. His mouth opened, then closed. When he calmed down, I got him onto his knees. He used the bed rail and I pushed from behind. With a sprained wrist. I didn't know it was sprained yet. You must have been in pain. I had other priorities. Why didn't you call somebody? I called the home care agency. The overnight aide was helping another client and couldn't get here for more than an hour. By then, Peter was back in bed. You could have called me. It was 2 a.m. So? So you lived 40 minutes away, and every time your father saw you during a confused spell, he tried to act normal. That isn't a reason. No. It was one of several. Nathan stood again. The chair legs scraped the floor. You should have called me. I called at 6:40 the next morning. That was about the facility. It was about all of it. You left a message saying a room was available. I called before I had the room. He frowned. The first call, I said. The one you said came after I decided. Nathan reached into his pocket and removed his phone, as though a call from months ago might still be waiting visibly on the screen. I was in a meeting. I know. I called back. At 9:20. They needed an answer by 9. You had 20 minutes. I had been awake all night. You could have asked them to wait. I did. He turned away, then walked to the closet and back. There was nowhere in the bedroom large enough for the movement he wanted. Why didn't you tell me he hit you? Because by morning he remembered. Nathan stopped. Dad remembered? Enough. He saw the bruise on my shoulder and asked what happened. I told him. He cried. I could still see Peter sitting on the edge of the bed in his undershirt, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He asked me if he was becoming his father, I said. Nathan knew what that meant. Peter's father had been hard and frightening even before age made him confused. What did you say? I said no. Was that true? Yes. Peter was sick. His father was cruel for practice. Nathan looked down. He made me promise not to tell you, I said. He said he didn't want his son remembering him that way. And you agreed? Yes. Why? Because he was humiliated. So you lied to protect him. I protected one piece of him, at my expense. I didn't know you would decide the missing pieces proved I abandoned him. You had months to tell me after he went into the facility, and every time I tried to describe what happened, you told me he looked fine. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Nathan raised his head. The sentence stayed between us. I could have softened it. I had softened thousands of things for him over the years. I did not. He walked to the window. He called me Frank once. I waited. It was in October, he said. I went to see him after work. He was sitting near the nurse's station, and when I came up, he smiled and called me Frank. He did that sometimes. I corrected him. I'm sure. He got angry. Said he knew his own brother. Nathan pressed 2 fingers against the window glass. Then he asked why I looked so old. Despite everything, a laugh escaped me. Nathan looked over his shoulder. I'm sorry, I said. He asked me why I had a woman's voice. Nathan gave a small, unwilling smile. It lasted only a moment. I left after 20 minutes, he said. I told Tessa he was tired. Were you? Yes. The word seemed to cost him. I hated that place, he said. The smell, the television, the way everybody spoke slowly, even when he understood them. I hated seeing his name written inside his shoes. So did he. I kept thinking if he came home, he would be more like himself. So did I. Then why didn't you try weekends again? Because home made him more frightened. Nathan shook his head, but less firmly. He recognized things, I said. He just couldn't place them. He knew the kitchen mattered, but not why. He knew the bedroom belonged to him, then accused me of sleeping in another man's bed. One afternoon, he stood in the hall and begged me to take him home while pointing at the front door. You never told me that. I told you he was disoriented. That doesn't sound the same. No, it doesn't. He sat again, this time on Peter's side of the bed. What else? He asked. I looked at him. You don't need every detail. I need something. Why now? Because I'm standing in a room where everything moved and I never noticed. His voice broke unnoticed. I folded my hands in my lap. I told him about Peter hiding pills beneath his tongue and spitting them into houseplants. I told him about finding the front door open at dawn and Peter halfway down the driveway wearing one shoe. I told him how he began having accidents and refused help afterward, how he slapped my hands away when I changed the bed, how he apologized on good mornings without knowing exactly what he had done. Nathan listened without interrupting. I told him Peter stopped recognizing hunger. I learned which foods he would accept by color and texture. I cut sandwiches into strips because squares confused him. I played the train records when he paced. I washed his hair in the kitchen sink after the shower became too frightening. I resented him, I said. Nathan's eyes lifted. Not all the time. Some days I resented the sound of him breathing because it meant he was awake and would need something. You don't have to say that. Yes, I do. Why? Because if we're finally telling the truth, you don't get a clean version. He looked toward Peter's shirts. I loved him, I said. I also wanted 1 hour when nobody touched me, called me, or asked where something was. Sometimes I sat in the car outside the facility and wished I didn't have to go in, but you went, every day. Nathan closed his eyes. When he died, I continued. I cried. Then I went home and slept for 7 hours without waking up. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I felt was relief. He looked at me. Then I felt so guilty I couldn't get out of bed. Mom, I am not telling you so you can forgive me. I don't know what you want me to say. Nothing. He rubbed his palms over his knees. I saw your call that morning. I waited, the one at 6:40. I wasn't in the meeting yet. My mouth went dry. I was in the parking lot, he said. I knew it would be another crisis, a fall, an appointment, Dad refusing something. I let it ring because I thought I'd call after the meeting when there was less time to get dragged into it. He spoke toward the floor. Then you left the message about the room. By the time I called, you'd already said yes. I told myself that proved you never wanted my opinion. Did you tell Tessa? No. Ruth? No. But you told both of them I didn't call. I said you made the decision alone. That is not the same thing. I know. A hot, exhausted anger moved through me. Not the sharp anger from the chapel. This was older. It had been waiting beneath every unanswered call. You let me become the villain because you were ashamed. Yes. The answer was barely audible. And at the memorial? Nathan stood. He walked to the cardboard box, picked up one of the altered shirts, then put it down again. Ruth said the front row should be blood family, he said. Ruth did not write the cards. No. Did she tell you to put me behind you? No. Then don't hide inside her sentence. He looked directly at me. I wanted you to feel what Dad felt, he said. The room seemed to narrow. You thought Peter felt 3 rows back. I thought he felt put away. So you put me away. Yes. The honesty was worse than denial. Nathan's face crumpled for a second before he regained it. I'm sorry. I stood. I believe you regret it. That's what sorry means. No. Regret is what you feel after the room is empty. What do you want from me? I don't know yet. Mom, I have spent my life knowing what everyone needed before they asked. I don't know what repair looks like this quickly. He lowered his head. We carried the brown suit and record box downstairs. Nathan left the slippers, the altered shirts, and both watches. At the front door, he held the envelope against his chest. Can I call Sunday? He asked. You can call. Will you answer? I don't know. He nodded. When he left, I locked the door out of habit, not anger. Then I went upstairs, sat on Peter's side of the bed, and cried for the man I had lost, the son I had not lost, and the years I had spent making both of them easier to love than they really were. The phone rang at noon on Sunday. Not 12:02 or 12:15. Noon exactly. I watched Nathan's name on the screen through 4 rings. On the 5th, I answered. Hello? Hi. Neither of us spoke. I could hear a washing machine behind him. In my kitchen, the refrigerator dropped a handful of ice into the tray with a crash that made us both say, "What was that?" Mine was the ice maker, I said. Mine was apparently a belt buckle in the dryer. Tessa is going to blame you. She already did. Another silence arrived, but this one had less furniture in it. Nathan cleared his throat. I'm not calling to ask for anything, all right? And I'm not calling to explain. That reduces the possibilities. I wanted to say I'm sorry again. I sat at the kitchen table. For what? I asked. He hesitated. I had not intended it as a test, but it became one. For putting you behind us, he said. For making the cards. For knowing it would hurt you and doing it because I wanted it to. My grip loosened around the phone. And for telling people you abandoned Dad when I knew there were things I didn't want to see. That is more specific. I've been thinking. I assumed something was wrong. He laughed softly. Can we have coffee? We are having something now, I mean in person, somewhere neutral. Are you worried I'll lock you out of a restaurant? I'm worried you'll make coffee at home and I'll spend the whole time staring at Dad's chair. That was honest enough to deserve an answer. Tuesday, I said. 10:30. Harlan's. I have work. Then Wednesday. I can do Tuesday. You just said you had work. I also have personal time. You should use it before they discover you're human. We agreed on 10:30. Nathan arrived at Harlan's before me. He had taken a booth near the back and placed the green cookbook on the seat beside him. A fresh red stain covered the lower corner. "What happened to my book?" I asked before removing my coat. "The sauce." The sauce was in a pot. It became ambitious. I sat across from him and examined the damage. This is why people don't lend you things. You lent me your car once. You returned it without the passenger mirror. That mailbox was too close to the street. It was attached to a house. The waitress appeared, and Nathan ordered coffee for both of us without asking. He remembered I took cream but no sugar. We talked first about harmless things, his work, the cold weather, the strange remodel happening at the old grocery store. Nathan said Tessa believed it was becoming a gym, while he believed it was becoming another grocery store with more expensive lighting. When the coffee arrived, he wrapped both hands around the mug. "Tessa is still angry with me," he said. "That sounds private. I'm not asking you to talk to her." "Good." She said I used her silence as permission. "Did you?" "Yes." I added cream to my coffee and watched pale clouds turn the surface. She also said I made her choose between standing beside you and standing beside me. He continued. "She chose you." "I know." "She apologized for that." "I know." "What are you apologizing to her for?" Nathan looked toward the window. "Making cruelty the price of loyalty." I stopped stirring. "That sounds like Tessa." "She said it." I wrote it down. "You wrote it down?" I didn't want to improve it later. A smile tugged at my mouth. "You are your father's son." Dad never wrote anything down. He improved everything later. Nathan nodded. The waitress returned with menus. Neither of us wanted food, but Nathan ordered toast because occupying a booth with only coffee made him anxious. I ordered an English muffin so he would not eat alone. That was the sort of instinct I was trying to notice before obeying, but sometimes an English muffin was simply an English muffin. "I talked to Ruth," he said after the waitress left. I put down the menu. I told her the seating was my decision. I told her you tried to reach me before the facility placement, and I didn't answer. What did she say? That you had turned me against her. That gives me remarkable power. She said you always resented how close she and Dad were. I resented that she reorganized my linen closet every Christmas. She said you're using Dad's illness to rewrite your marriage. I felt the old heat rise, but Nathan kept speaking. I told her she only saw pieces. I told her I only saw pieces too. And she hung up. Ruth prefers conversations with strong endings. She called back 20 minutes later. Of course. Nathan traced a crack in the table's varnish. She said family should handle disagreements privately. I laughed. A man in the next booth glanced over. Nathan smiled despite himself. I told her putting your name in the third row wasn't private. Tessa's line. It was good, it was. She asked if you made me call her. What did you say? I said you didn't know I was calling. Did I? No. Then you passed. He looked at me. Is this a test? No. But you keep acting as though there will be a moment when I announce you have completed the required tasks and everything returns to normal. I don't expect normal. What do you expect? I don't know. He rubbed his thumb against the handle of the mug. I'd like you to believe I'm trying. I do. He looked surprised. I also believe trying will be inconvenient longer than you want it to be. His toast arrived. The waitress set my English muffin beside it and gave us both the look of someone who had overheard enough to charge by the hour. Nathan buttered his toast badly, leaving dry corners. Did Dad know? He asked. Know what? That I blamed you. I considered the question. Not directly. Did he ask about me? Yes. How often? Less near the end. Time stopped organizing itself for him. What did you tell him? That you were working? That you would come soon, even when I hadn't said I would? Yes. Nathan lowered his eyes. Why? Because he loved you. He must have known I wasn't coming enough. Sometimes. The butter knife stopped. One afternoon he asked whether you were angry at him, I said. I told him no. Was that another simplification? Yes. Nathan pushed the plate away. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. It already happened. I should have been there. Yes. He looked at me, perhaps waiting for comfort. I drank my coffee. After a while, he pulled his plate back and ate the toast. That was how our coffees began, not weekly at first. One Tuesday, then another 10 days later, then twice in the same week because Nathan happened to be nearby and called before I could invent a reason not to go. He never came to the house unannounced again. Sometimes we talked about Peter. Sometimes we did not. Nathan told me Tessa had forbidden him from roasting any animal larger than 4 pounds. I told him June had begun dating Ed, the gravy accountant, though both of them denied the word dating and used coordinating schedules instead. At our 4th coffee, Nathan brought me a new copy of The Home Italian Kitchen. This isn't my book, I said. It's the same edition. My book has notes. You said the old one was damaged. I described a fact. I didn't request a replacement. He frowned. I thought you'd want one without the stain. The stains are how I know which recipes worked. He took the new copy home and kept my old one for another week. When he returned it, he had written in pencil beside the sauce recipe. Stir constantly means more often than you think. I left the note. Ruth did not call me, but Frank did. She and Nathan had words, he said. So I heard. She's very upset. I'm sure. She thinks you should speak to her. Then she can call. She says you won't answer. She hasn't tried. Frank sighed. I'm in the middle again. No. You're on the telephone again. The middle is a location you choose. I wish you'd stop saying things like that. I wish you'd stop presenting me with Ruth's emotions as a repair order. He was quiet. Then he said, Denise and I are having dinner with Nathan and Tessa next Friday. That sounds nice. We'd like you to come. Will Ruth be there? No. Does she know? No. I leaned against the counter. That seems healthy. It's dinner, Elaine, not a conspiracy. Those are not mutually exclusive in this family. Frank laughed. Will you come? I almost said no. An invitation arranged through Frank felt like another room where everyone would monitor my tone. Then Nathan called me himself that evening. I asked Frank to invite you, he said. Then Tessa told me that was cowardly. Tessa has had a productive year, so I'm asking. Dinner, our house, Friday at 6. Why is Frank coming? Because I like him. Do you? Sometimes. And Denise? Tessa likes her. That sounds balanced. Will you come? I looked toward Peter's chair. The black urn remained on the mantel above it. We still had not decided what to do with the ashes. Every discussion became tangled in who counted as family and who had the right to choose. For 1 hour, I said, that's not long enough for dinner. Then serve promptly. Friday night, I drove myself despite Nathan offering to pick me up. I parked where no one could block me in. Tessa opened the door wearing an apron printed with tiny lemons. You came, she said. I said I would. I know. Nathan told me not to act surprised. Then why are you? Because I've met this family. She hugged me. Nathan had set the table himself. I knew because the forks were on the wrong side and every water glass was filled to the rim. The lobster bib photograph sat framed on a shelf in the living room. My envelope was tucked behind it. Frank and Denise arrived carrying wine. Nobody mentioned Ruth for the first 40 minutes. At 41, Frank failed. She would hate these potatoes, he said. The table went still. Nathan looked at me. I waited for him to smooth it over, change the subject, or make the silence my responsibility. Instead, he said, Ruth isn't here. Frank blinked. I know, so let her hate them from home. Denise took another helping. At 7, my promised hour ended. No one reminded me. I stayed for dessert. Dessert was an apple crisp with one edge burned and the other edge cold. Tessa stared at it on the counter. I followed the recipe. Nathan peered over her shoulder. Did the recipe say to use the broiler? It said brown the top, with heat from the sun. Go sit down. He returned to the table carrying a carton of vanilla ice cream. We're having deconstructed crisp. It's still constructed, Denise said. Then it's rustic. Frank accepted a serving large enough to include both climate zones. He covered it with ice cream and ate without complaint, which may have been the bravest thing any Mercer had done that year. We were almost finished when his eyes moved toward the living room. From his seat, he could see Peter's photograph, but not the urn at my house. Still, I knew where his thoughts had gone. "What are we doing with Pete?" he asked. Tessa stopped scraping burned sugar from her bowl. Nathan looked at me. It was the first time anyone in the family had asked the question without immediately attaching an answer. "I've been thinking about Millstone Lake," I said. Frank frowned. "Why there?" Peter liked the overlook on the west side. He liked fishing on the east dock. He complained every time he fished there. That doesn't mean he didn't like it. He complained every time he did most things, Nathan said. Denise pointed her spoon at him. That doesn't mean he didn't like anything. That's what I just said. It was what you meant. I smiled. Peter would have enjoyed the argument, especially because it concerned him and required no participation. The West Overlook is where we used to take coffee on Saturday mornings, I said, before he got sick. Frank looked down at his plate. Ruth wants him with Mom and Dad. In the cemetery? Yes. Peter said cemeteries were apartment buildings for people who had stopped needing kitchens. Nathan laughed so suddenly he inhaled ice cream and began coughing. Tessa patted his back. Elegant. He said that at Grandpa's funeral, Nathan managed. I know. Ruth refused to speak to him for the rest of the day. She spoke to him in the parking lot, Frank said. She told him he was a disgrace. That counts as speaking. Frank pushed the cold side of his dessert around the bowl. It should be a family decision. I waited. Nathan put down his spoon. Mom should decide. She shouldn't decide alone. She was Dad's wife. Frank's eyes lifted, and I was his brother. I know. We all lost him. No one said we didn't. Frank looked at me, then back at Nathan. Ruth is going to think this came from Elaine. It did, Nathan said. She just told us. The room went quiet. Nathan's face colored, but he continued. We can have opinions. Mom decides what happens to Dad's ashes. If Ruth wants to be involved, she can call Mom and speak to her like she was married to him. I did not move. The statement was not dramatic. Nathan did not raise his voice. Frank did not surrender. But my son had said wife in a room where saying it might cost him something. Frank rubbed his forehead. You two aren't making this easy. It wasn't easy when you stayed in the car either, I said. Denise touched Frank's wrist. He looked at her hand, then at me. I should have come to the door. Yes. I thought Ruth needed to say what she needed to say. She always does. I didn't know how to disagree without making it worse. For whom? Denise asked. Frank looked at his wife. It was the same question I had asked him while he carried pans from my kitchen, but it sounded different coming from her. I'm working on it, he said. Denise resumed eating her burned apple crisp. Good. Nathan drove me home even though I had brought my own car. Tessa followed in mine because she said it was late, though it was only 9 and I could see perfectly well. At my door, Nathan handed back my keys. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know. Tessa was tailgating you. She believes 2 car lengths is abandonment. Tessa rolled down her window. I can hear you. Nathan waved. Before returning to his car, he glanced toward my living room window. Peter's recliner was visible beneath the lamp. Do you still want the chair? I asked. Nathan thought about it. No. Why not? It belongs there. For now. He nodded. For now. The answer pleased me more than if he had surrendered the chair forever. Our visits moved gradually from coffee shops back into the house. Nathan came one Saturday to help me sort the fishing equipment for Frank. Most of it had not been used in years. Peter owned 14 lures designed to resemble creatures that had never existed in nature. Nathan held up one painted chartreuse with feathers and 3 hooks. "What is this catch?" "Men in sporting goods stores." We divided the rods by condition. Frank got the best 2, plus Peter's tackle box. Nathan kept an old reel he remembered learning to cast with. I threw away a bag of rubber worms that had melted together into something that looked medical. Nathan found the watches in my bedroom drawer that afternoon. He picked up the gold one first. This was Grandpa's. Yes, he used to wear it to church. Peter wore it twice and complained it pulled his arm hair. What about the Hamilton? That was his good watch. Nathan looked at me. The words settled. When he said I could have his good one, he said, "He meant this." "I think so. You weren't sure before." I was angry before. He turned the silver watch over. The leather band was worn dark where Peter's wrist had rested. "Do you want it?" Nathan asked. "I want you to have it." That's not the same question. I sat on the edge of the bed. "I bought it for our 30th anniversary," I said. He wore it whenever he thought an event required him to understand wine, which he didn't. He ordered Merlot because he liked saying Merlot. Nathan smiled. "You should keep it." "No, he intended it for you." "How do you know?" "Because he told me after your 35th birthday. He said you admired it but were too polite to ask." I wasn't polite. I said, "That's a nice watch." To Peter, admiration and acquisition were neighbors. Nathan fastened it around his wrist. The band was loose. He had bigger wrists, he said. He had larger opinions, too. He wore the watch home. 2 weeks later, he called to ask when I wanted to visit Millstone Lake. The day we chose was gray and windy. The snack stand was closed for the season, and the metal picnic tables were wet. Nathan brought coffee in a thermos that leaked down the side every time he poured. "This is terrible coffee," I said. "It's the same brand you use. You did something to it. I made it." "That's what you did." We carried our cups to the overlook. The water below was dark and restless. Bare branches rattled above us, and a gull stood on the railing with the hostile confidence of a small landlord. Peter had loved that view because it made the town look farther away than it was. On Saturday mornings, he would bring a newspaper, read the same paragraph 3 times, and then interrupt me to complain that I was not enjoying the silence correctly. Nathan leaned against the railing. "Would he want everybody here?" he asked. "No. You answered fast. Your father disliked ceremonies. He liked his retirement party. He planned that. He made a speech for 40 minutes. He trapped people with cake." Nathan smiled. I watched the wind roughen the lake. "I'd like something small." "You, Tessa, Frank, Denise, Ruth, if she can manage it." "Manage what?" "Saying my name without developing an allergy. She still thinks you should call first. I'm not interested." "I know. Does that bother you?" "Yes." The answer was honest. Nathan poured more coffee. Most of it reached the cup. "She's my aunt," he said. "She was there for us." "So was I." "I know. I'm not comparing. You used to. I used to need one of you to be right. And now? Now I think you can both be difficult, but only one of you changed Dad's sheets." I looked at him. He stared out at the water. That sounded better in my head. No, it sounded accurate. He put the thermos on the bench. The Hamilton showed beneath his coat sleeve. "I'll tell Ruth the plan," he said. "Tell her she's welcome. Don't tell her I need her permission. I won't. And don't make Tessa call. I wasn't going to. You're improving. Slowly. Those are often the durable kinds." We chose a Saturday in April. Nathan said he would contact everyone. I said I would bring Peter's ashes. Ruth called me the following night. She did not say hello. Nathan says, "You're scattering Peter at Millstone." I'm not firing him from a cannon, Ruth. He belongs with his parents. He belonged with many people. You've made Nathan afraid to disagree with you. I assure you that would require more power than I possess. He told me I'm not welcome unless I acknowledge you as Peter's wife. That sounds like a very low entrance requirement. He said I have to apologize. I didn't ask him to say that. But you're enjoying it. No. Ruth went quiet. Through the phone, I heard a spoon strike the side of a mug. She was in her kitchen. I pictured the yellow curtains she had kept since 1994 and the wooden plaque above her stove that said, "Family is everything." "I don't know what you want from me," she said. "That phrase is becoming popular. I loved my brother. I know. I thought he was asking us for help. He was. And you wouldn't bring him home." "I couldn't. You decided that." "Yes." Ruth's breathing changed. For once, she did not have the next argument ready. "I believed him," she said. "So did I, every time he said he was scared." The line stayed quiet. Then she said, "Nathan is choosing you." "No. He is choosing his own behavior. That's the sort of thing you say to make yourself sound reasonable." "Ruth, I am tired of apologizing for sentences just because you can't find a hole in them." She almost laughed. I heard it catch and turn into something else. After a moment, she said, "If I come to the lake, will you make a scene?" I sat in the third row at my husband's memorial without making one. That isn't fair. "No," I said. It wasn't. Ruth inhaled sharply. I expected her to hang up. Instead, she asked, "What should I bring?" "Nothing." "Someone should bring flowers." Peter hated cut flowers. He sent them to Mom. He sent them because you reminded him. "I'll bring coffee. Nathan makes terrible coffee." "I know." We were quiet again. "I'm not ready to forgive you," Ruth said. I didn't ask. "Are you going to forgive me?" "I don't know." She let out a breath. April then. April. When the call ended, I stood alone in my kitchen with the phone against my chest. It was not peace. But for the first time, Ruth had asked what to bring instead of telling me where to sit. April gave us a cold morning with bright sun and enough wind to make everyone question the wisdom of carrying loose human remains near open water. I drove Peter to Millstone Lake in the passenger seat. The black urn sat inside a canvas grocery bag secured by the seat belt. I had tried placing it on the floor, but every turn made it roll against the seat frame. Buckling it in felt ridiculous until I remembered Peter refusing to wear his own seatbelt because it wrinkled his shirts. Then it felt appropriate. Nathan was already at the Overlook when I arrived. He wore Peter's Hamilton beneath the cuff of his blue jacket. Tessa stood beside him with her hands buried in her pockets. "Do you need help?" Nathan asked as I lifted the bag from the car. "I have it." He nodded and did not reach for it. That mattered. Frank and Denise arrived together. Frank carried a paper sack from a bakery despite being told not to bring anything. Denise carried napkins. "They're not the roofing kind," she told me. "Then what will protect our skin?" Common sense. We're in trouble. Ruth pulled in last. She parked badly across two spaces, got out, inspected the angle, and left it that way. She wore slacks and a red wool coat I had seen every winter since Reagan was president. In each hand was a stainless steel thermos. "I brought regular and decaf," she announced. "Peter considered decaf a betrayal," Frank said. "It's for Denise." "I drink regular," Denise said. Ruth frowned at the thermos as if it had misrepresented her. "I'll drink it," Tessa offered. "You don't have to," Denise said. "It's coffee, not a kidney." Nathan looked at me. "Do you want to start? We can drink first." Ruth handed me a paper cup and poured from the regular thermos. The coffee was hot, strong, and exactly the way Peter made it before his hands became unreliable. "You remembered," I said. Of course I remembered. She sounded insulted, which was reassuring. We stood near the railing with our cups. No one knew where to look. The lake gave us somewhere, but after a while, even staring at water became obvious. Frank opened the bakery sack. I brought bear claws. "Pete hated bear claws," Ruth said. "He ate them. He peeled off the almonds. He ate everything else. Then you brought him a mutilation project." Frank held the bag toward me. Do you want one? Yes. I took a pastry. Peter had liked bear claws just fine. He peeled off the almonds because he believed they interfered with the icing. Nathan cleared his throat. Mom said no ceremony. Everyone looked at me. I said small, I corrected. You said Dad disliked ceremonies. He disliked ceremonies where other people spoke longer than he did. Frank swallowed a bite. I could say something. Not the sofa story, Denise said. I have other stories. You have 3. I've been his brother my whole life, and you've told the same 3 stories the whole time. Tell one, I said. Denise looked at me in surprise. Frank brushed sugar from his jacket. When Pete was about 19, he bought a motorcycle. Ruth groaned. Not that story. You said the sofa story was overused. The motorcycle story makes him sound irresponsible. He bought a motorcycle, Ruth. I'm not doing that, Frank continued. Peter had hidden the motorcycle behind their parents' garage for 6 weeks. He told their mother it belonged to a neighbor. Their father discovered it only after Frank borrowed the bike, ran out of gas 4 miles away, and called home for help. Pete made me push it back, Frank said. Wouldn't even let me sit on it while he walked. You were 16, Ruth said. I was 17. You had no license. I was pushing it. He sold it the next day, Frank said. Gave half the money to Mom and told her he'd been holding it for the neighbor. Ruth laughed, not politely, not carefully. She threw her head back and laughed the way Peter had, with surprise at her own amusement. Frank joined her. Even Denise, who had probably heard the story 20 times, smiled. I never knew that, I said. He didn't tell you? Frank asked. No. Ruth wiped beneath one eye. He told you everything else. Not everything. The laughter faded without becoming awkward. Nathan looked at the grocery bag beside my feet. We carried it down a short path to a flat patch of stone near the water. The wind was gentler there, broken by trees and the slope of the hill. I removed the urn. No one spoke. The container was heavier than it should have been. That had startled me when I first picked it up from the funeral home. Peter's body had become so thin near the end that I could lift his legs onto the bed. Somehow, what remained of him felt solid again. I thought I would know what to say, I admitted. You don't have to say anything, Tessa said. I've never let that stop me. Nathan smiled. I held the urn with both hands. Peter would have complained about the weather. It's sunny, Frank said. He preferred indoor sun. He'd ask where the chairs were, Ruth said. And why the coffee was over there, Denise added. He'd tell us we were blocking the view, Nathan said. For a moment, I could hear him doing it. Move left, Elaine. No, my left. Frank, you're standing like a toll booth. I removed the lid. The ashes inside were pale and coarse, nothing like Peter and entirely him. Nathan stepped beside me, not in front and not behind. Do you want me to hold it? He asked. Hold the bottom. He placed one hand beneath the urn. Together, we tilted it toward the water. The first stream caught the light, then vanished against the dark surface. Some settled on the stone near our shoes. Ruth made a distressed sound. It's all right, I said. It's on the ground. Peter spent most of his life tracking dirt into my house. He can manage. We laughed because the alternative was impossible. I passed the urn to Nathan. He scattered some. Then Frank. When Frank handed it toward Ruth, she did not take it. She looked at me. May I? The question tightened my throat. Yes. Ruth held the urn against her red coat. Her lips moved, but whatever she said was meant for Peter alone. After Denise and Tessa each took a turn, I emptied the last of the ashes into the lake. The wind carried them away from us. We stayed there until the urn was empty and the coffee cold. On the walk back to the parking lot, Ruth touched my arm. I brought this, she said. She removed Peter's high school pin from her coat pocket. It lay in her palm, the gold dulled with age. I shouldn't have taken it from the dresser, she said. No, I thought because I gave it to him originally. You still should have asked. I know. The admission seemed to surprise both of us. She offered me the pin. I looked at it, then closed her fingers around it. Keep it. Ruth frowned. But it was in your house. It was part of your life with him before me. That didn't seem to matter at the memorial. Her voice was quiet. I met her eyes. It mattered. It just wasn't the only part. Ruth looked toward Nathan. He stood near the cars with Tessa, folding the empty grocery bag. I thought if I admitted what caring for him was really like, I would be admitting I hadn't done enough, she said. You hadn't. Her face stiffened. Neither had Nathan, I continued. Neither had Frank. Sometimes neither had I. You were there every day. And sometimes I sat in the parking lot for 40 minutes before going inside. That isn't the same. No, it isn't. Ruth opened her hand and studied the pin. I'm not ready to talk about the chapel, she said. Then don't pretend we have. She nodded once and put the pin back in her pocket. We had breakfast at a diner near the lake. Nathan reached the door first and held it open. Inside, the hostess asked how many. 6, Frank said. 7, Denise corrected. Frank counted, embarrassed. 7. The hostess led us to a long table near the window. Nathan paused before sitting. Mom, where do you want to be? Ruth looked down. I chose the chair beside Tessa, across from Nathan. Nobody objected. That became the shape of the next several months. Not forgiveness, exactly. Space where forgiveness might someday fit. Ruth and I spoke rarely. When we did, we stayed with practical subjects. She asked for a copy of Peter's apple cake recipe. I told her it came from the same cookbook as the sauce. He told me Mom invented that cake, she said. Your mother was an accomplished plagiarist. Ruth laughed before remembering we were still angry. Frank picked up the fishing equipment and brought me a new bathroom flapper, though the toilet had stopped running. Denise came inside with him this time. She took the 2 best rods to the car while Frank replaced a part that did not need replacing. Nathan returned to Sunday calls, but not as a ritual I was required to wait for. Sometimes he called at noon. Sometimes I called him first. Once I ignored the phone because June and I were at a movie, and I called him back the next day without apologizing. He noticed. You were out? He asked. Yes. On Sunday? The calendar allowed it. With June and Ed, the gravy man? He has other qualities. Have you identified them? June says he listens. That must be exhausting for this family. Nathan and Tessa began inviting me to dinner twice a month. I did not attend every time. When I did, I drove myself and left when I wanted. The lobster photograph remained on their shelf. Beside it, Nathan eventually placed one of our wedding pictures. He did not mention doing it. Neither did I. At home, I began sorting Peter's clothes. Nathan helped with the suits but left the shirts to me. I donated most of them. I kept the blue one with the hidden snaps and Peter's navy sweater, though it still had a small bleach mark near the cuff. We rolled the blue bedroom rug back into place. I thought this was gone, Nathan said. I stored it in the attic. You carried it up there? June helped. Why didn't you ask me? You weren't speaking to me. He winced. I'm not punishing you, I said. I know. We stood at opposite ends of the rug, adjusting it until the pattern aligned with the bed. What about the rail? He asked. I don't need it. I can take it to the garage. Please. He carried it downstairs. The scrape remained on the wall. I considered painting over it, then decided I was not ready. Readiness had stopped being a country and become a series of small rooms. Peter's recliner stayed in the living room through summer. I sat in it sometimes. The first few times felt like trespassing. Then the cushion began adjusting to my shape. Near the end of September, Nathan called on a Thursday evening. I've been thinking about Dad's anniversary, he said. I looked at the calendar, though I knew the date. What kind of thinking? Dinner at our house. Nothing formal. Who? You, Tessa, Frank, Denise, Ruth, June if you want. Why June? She sat with you. The answer was simple enough to hurt. Invite her, I said. Will you come? Yes. He exhaled. Okay. Nathan. Yeah? I don't want speeches. No speeches. I don't want a program. I don't own a printer. You printed place cards. The silence lasted 2 beats. "I won't," he said. On the anniversary of Peter's death, I wore the dark green blouse that made my eyes look expensive. June drove separately because I told her I might leave early. When I reached Nathan's house, I sat in the car for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. Through the front window, I could see Ruth's red coat over a chair. Frank was opening wine. Tessa moved between the kitchen and dining room while Nathan set down a serving bowl. There were no place cards on the table. I went inside. Tessa met me in the entryway wearing the lemon apron. "You're on time," she said. "I'm always on time." "I know. I was trying to greet you without making it sound like we'd taken bets. Who won?" "Denise." From the dining room, Denise called. I said 6:58. I checked my watch. "You underestimated me by 1 minute." Tessa took my coat. "Nathan has forbidden everyone from helping. Everyone. Especially you. That seems personal." "It is." Nathan came out of the kitchen carrying a bowl of green beans. His shirt was damp beneath the collar, and a smear of something red marked one cuff. "Hi, Mom. Is that sauce?" "It's controlled." That was not my question. I stirred it every 4 minutes. "You timed it?" I set alarms. Behind him, his phone sounded a bright chime. He turned and hurried back into the kitchen. Tessa watched him go. There are 9 alarms. Peter would be horrified. Peter ate burned sauce for 30 years because nobody told him it was burned. He knew. He believed criticizing free food violated his principles. Tessa glanced toward Ruth. Ruth stood beside the fireplace talking to Frank. She had brought the high school pin, though she wore it on a plain black sweater rather than a morning dress. When she saw me, she touched it unconsciously. "Elaine," she said. "Ruth." There was an entire year inside the space between our names. She crossed the room and kissed my cheek. The gesture was quick and dry, but not false. "I brought the apple cake," she said. "From the plagiarized recipe? I added walnuts. Then it's legally yours." Frank handed me a glass of wine. "I chose this." "Denise chose it," Denise said. "I carried it." "Then it's a joint venture." June arrived a few minutes later with Ed, though only June had been invited. "I couldn't leave him alone with gravy," she explained. Ed held up a small insulated container. "This is not for dinner. It's personal use." Nathan came from the kitchen again. He looked at Ed, then the container, then me. "Long story," I said. I brought an extra chair. "Good host. Anxious host. Those are cousins." When dinner was ready, everyone moved toward the table. There were no cards, no designated sides, no arrangement disguised as convenience. Nathan stood behind one chair with his hands resting on the back. "Mom," he said, "where do you want to sit?" Every face turned toward me, which was more attention than I wanted. I could have chosen the head. Nathan would have given it to me. That was the difference. I selected an ordinary chair beside him, across from Tessa. "Here," I said. Ruth sat near Frank. June and Ed took the far end. Denise chose the chair beside Tessa, leaving Nathan to navigate serving dishes around elbows and wine glasses. The meal was good. Not good for Nathan, not good considering the circumstances. Good. The chicken was moist. The potatoes had crisp edges. The green beans had been cooked for 10 minutes rather than 40, though Ruth stared at them suspiciously. "These are almost raw," she said. "They're green," Nathan replied. "That's the color. Your father preferred them soft. Dad preferred not chewing. He had excellent teeth. He had 3 chipped crowns," I said. Nathan looked at me and smiled. The sauce was better than mine. I did not tell him immediately. He kept glancing toward the serving bowl each time someone tasted it. Tessa noticed and rolled her eyes. "Mom," he said finally, "how's the sauce?" "It needs oregano." His face fell. "I'm kidding. You don't joke about ingredients. Apparently, I've grown." He leaned back, relieved. "So it's good. It's excellent." Nathan looked absurdly pleased. Conversation moved around Peter without circling him. Frank told a story about getting lost on a fishing trip and admitted Peter had not been responsible. Denise described the first dinner she attended at our house. when Peter served her a steak so rare she believed it still had plans. "He was trying to impress you," I said. "He kept asking why I wasn't eating." "You said you weren't hungry," Frank reminded her. "I was afraid if I cut into it, it would speak." Ed had never met Peter. That turned out to be useful. He asked questions nobody else would have asked because we assumed we knew the answers. "What did he do when he was bored?" Ed asked. "Bothered me," I said. "Reorganized the garage," Frank said. "Called people," Ruth said. "Bought batteries," Nathan added. We all looked at him. "Batteries?" Tessa asked. "He always had batteries." "He did," I said. "Every size except the one you needed." "What was his best quality?" Ed asked. That question quieted us. "Loyalty," Ruth said first. She said it without looking at me. Frank chose humor. Denise said Peter remembered how people took their coffee. Tessa said he made room for silence, which surprised me because Peter rarely left any. Nathan rubbed his thumb along the silver watch band. "He made ordinary things feel permanent," he said. I looked at him. "Sunday calls," he continued. "Dinner. Records playing. Sitting in that chair, complaining about the news. You thought it would all just keep happening because he acted like it would." "What do you think, Elaine?" Ed asked. I considered Peter's best quality and found too many answers, none of them clean. "He came back," I said. June understood. I could tell by her face. The others waited. "After an argument," I explained. "After he embarrassed himself. After he disappointed you. Peter could be stubborn for days, but eventually he came into the room. He wasn't always good at apologizing. Sometimes he offered toast. Sometimes he asked a question he already knew the answer to. But he came back." Nathan looked down at his plate. Ruth picked up her wine. "To Peter," she said. The others raised their glasses. We drank. For a while, the dinner became almost easy. June told everyone about the time I flooded her bathroom while attempting to repair a faucet. I clarified that the faucet had been structurally dishonest. Ed opened his private gravy and passed it to Frank, who declared it better than anything sold commercially. When the plates were empty, Nathan and Tessa cleared them. I began to stand. Nathan pointed at my chair. "Sit. I can carry plates." "I know. I'm not helpless. I know that too." "Then stop pointing." He lowered his hand. "Would you please remain seated while I do the work I invited you here to watch me do? That's a strange invitation." "Mom." I sat. He collected my plate. Ruth watched the exchange with a look I could not read. Nathan returned carrying the chocolate cake. It had too much frosting. Not decorative frosting piped into flowers. Thick, dark frosting spread across the top and sides in heavy waves. Peter would have scraped extra from someone else's plate when he thought they were finished. "No white cake?" Frank asked. Nathan set it in the middle of the table. Dad hated white cake. Ruth folded her napkin. White was appropriate for the memorial. "Peter wasn't eating at the memorial," I said. Nobody answered. The knife made a soft tearing sound through the frosting. Nathan cut 9 pieces. He gave me the first one without announcing why. The cake tasted like Peter's birthdays before illness turned food into negotiation. Ruth ate 2 bites, then set down her fork. "I'm glad we did this," she said. "After everything." "So am I," Frank replied. "It's good to have Peter's family together again." The sentence was not spoken viciously. That made it more dangerous. Ruth gestured lightly around the table, including me this time. She probably believed that fixed it. I might once have allowed it to. I might have smiled, eaten cake, and performed gratitude because my inclusion had finally been restored. Nathan put down the knife. "Aunt Ruth," he said. She looked at him. "Don't use that word like you decide who qualifies." Her face changed. "I included your mother. That isn't the point. What point could there possibly be? I said we're all family, after spending a year treating it like a membership you could cancel." "Nathan," Frank warned. "No." Nathan's voice remained level. Mom was Dad's wife. She cared for him when the rest of us found reasons not to. If she isn't family, this isn't a family dinner. Nobody applauded. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Ed stared at his cake as if wishing he had brought a private dessert. Ruth's cheeks reddened. I came to the lake. Yes. I spoke to her. Yes. She let me keep the pin. That doesn't erase the chapel. Ruth turned to me. Did you ask him to do this? No. She doesn't have to, Nathan said. I was the one who told her to sit behind us. I never told you to say that. You told me the front should be blood family. I was grieving my brother, and I was grieving my father. We still chose to be cruel. Ruth pushed back her chair. Frank reached toward her. Ruth. No. Apparently this dinner was arranged so Nathan could make a speech. I didn't plan this. You've been waiting all year to humiliate me. Nathan flinched. I recognized the phrase. It was one he had once used against me. No, he said. I've been hoping you'd understand without making me say it. Ruth picked up her coat from the back of the chair. So you're choosing her. I'm choosing not to help you hurt her. She has made you ashamed of your father. Nathan stood. She made it possible for me to remember him honestly. Ruth looked at him, then at me. For a moment, I saw the woman at my door with one foot across the threshold, armed with certainty because uncertainty would have required grief. I did not ask her to stay. Neither did Nathan. Ruth put on her coat. Her hand brushed the pin on her sweater. I hope you're happy, she said to me. I'm not, I answered. That seemed to unsettle her more than satisfaction would have. Frank stood halfway. Denise touched his sleeve. He looked from Ruth to his wife, then sat back down. Ruth noticed. She left without another word. The front door closed. Nathan remained standing beside the table. The anger drained from his face, leaving fear. I'm sorry, he said. I could not tell whether he meant the scene, the year, or all of it. So am I said. Frank rubbed both hands over his face. She'll call me from the car. You can answer, Denise said. You don't have to leave. He looked at her and nodded. Tessa picked up the cake knife. Does anyone want another piece? It was such a Tessa question. Practical, kind, and unwilling to let disaster waste good frosting. Ed raised his hand. June did too. Slowly, conversation returned. Not to normal. Normal had required too much pretending. We spoke around the empty chair Ruth left behind. Frank answered his ringing phone once, told her he would call later, and set it face down. Nobody asked me to fix anything. When the others left, June kissed my cheek at the door. You all right? She asked. No, good answer. Ed handed Nathan the insulated gravy container. Keep it. Nathan accepted it solemnly. Frank hugged me before leaving. It was the first time he had done that since Peter died. I should have stood up, he said. Yes. He held on a second longer. I know. After the door closed, Tessa began stacking dishes. You cooked, I told her. I'll help clean. She looked at Nathan. Don't look at him, I offered. Nathan raised both hands. I've learned not to interfere with clear consent. We carried plates into the kitchen. I washed. Tessa dried. Nathan put things away in the wrong cabinets until both of us told him to stop. When the counters were clean, Tessa took the dish towel from my hands. I'm going to change, she said. Do not reorganize anything while I'm gone. That is directed at your husband. It applies to the bloodline. Nathan groaned. She kissed him, squeezed my shoulder, and left us in the kitchen. Nathan cut 2 narrow slices from the remaining cake. We sat at the table with them. I may have lost Ruth, he said. No, she won't speak to me. That isn't the same as losing someone. How long did she stop speaking to Dad over the leaf blower? 6 weeks. And the cemetery joke? Until the parking lot. Nathan pushed his fork through the frosting. What if she doesn't come back? Then it will hurt. He looked at me. That's all? What do you want me to promise? That doing the right thing works. It worked for me. His expression tightened. I touched the sleeve above Peter's watch. You stood beside me when it cost you something, I said. That matters. I should have done it at the chapel. Yes, I can't change that. No. He nodded, accepting the answer without asking me to make it kinder. After a moment, he said, I miss you. You see me every other week. I miss how it used to be. So do I. Sometimes. You don't want it back. I don't want to disappear into keeping everyone comfortable. Nathan looked toward the dining room. I think I miss what you did, he said. And I miss you. I'm trying to learn the difference. That may take a while. I have personal time. I laughed. When I stood to leave, Nathan carried my coat to the door but did not put it around my shoulders as if I were fragile. Sunday? He asked. If I don't answer, call Monday. Are you busy? I might be. With June? Possibly. And the gravy man. He listens. Nathan opened the door. The night air was cool. My car waited at the curb facing home. Behind me, the dining room held an unassigned table, one empty chair, and the remains of a chocolate cake Peter would have loved. Nathan touched my elbow. Mom. I turned. Next time, he said, wherever you sit, I'm sitting beside you. I looked at my son, the man who had once placed me behind him, and the man willing now to lose approval rather than leave me there. Don't make a ceremony of it, I said. He smiled. Then he stood on the porch while I walked to my car, and this time, neither of us mistook being able to leave for being left behind.